Aside that, in terms of security here at the Parliament House, we'll say that everything is on point. We've seen the Ghana police represented here. We've seen the military represented here. Of course, we've seen officials from the Ghana Fire Service also represented here. Now, inside the auditorium or inside the Parliament House, we've seen diplomats from different countries well represented here. We've also seen some members of parliament, of course dignitaries including chiefs, key stakeholders when it comes to issues here in the country also seated in there. We've also been able to spot some few, let me say, students who are also here to find out really what the president has to say in terms of education, what they've been able to achieve so far in 2019 on their third year. You know that in 2018 the president did highlight a number of things, including the achievement that we're able to chalk in terms of education, in terms of the economy, the state of the economy, security as well. But today's State of the Nation's address is going to be very interesting, as I just touched on security, looking at the violence that erupted at the Ayawaso West Wagon. Many who have gathered here today are expecting the president to address the State of the Nation's security system right here. We've been witnessing, as GH1 TV has been bringing you live coverage of the Commission of Inquiry that have been sitting since Thursday. We've seen that, of course, the president is yet to answer to some of the things that have come up, looking at the security formation of the security system here. So we are hoping that, in fact, not just me, but many who have turned out here are hoping that the president will touch on security here. Of course, the issue of vigilantism has also come up. To be disbanded or not to be disbanded is the debate right now. And just yesterday, the Commission of Inquiry, Professor Henrietta, made an appeal to media that they should not be sugar-coated. They should actually see to it that sugar-coated words concerning this particular phenomenon does not make them see the impact that the existence of vigilante groups are causing, the terror that they are causing in this particular country. So that is what we are expecting here today. Many have showed up. Very soon we have received information that the President of the Republic of Ghana, together with his wife, Mrs. Rebecca Na Okaiko Akufo-Addo, will be here soon, and then they will be received by the Speaker of Parliament. We've also seen the Chief of Staff here and others who are here to ensure that today's State of the Nation's address goes on smoothly. So that is what is happening currently at the premises of Parliament House here in Accra. This is GH1's TV comprehensive report on the State of the Nation's address. My colleagues who are stationed at different locations right here at Parliament House would also be giving you up-to-date information when it comes to interviews with some members of Parliament, some ministers of state, some key stakeholders who have showed up here to find out from them really what they are hoping that the president will touch on. So we are here awaiting the arrival of the president.
I'm also taking over here in the foyer of the Chamber of Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. And basically, this is a coverage of the State of the Nation as the third edition for President Amanor. The dignitaries have been walking in, as you are aware, that former President Rawlings has made his way into the chamber, former President Mahama Faye and other dignitaries. We are waiting the arrival of the president, as you are aware, and his vice, together with other dignitaries. So this is a continuous coverage of the third edition of the State of the Nation address for Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic of Ghana's presidency. Let me engage some people, some members of Parliament, some stakeholders who have made their way to Parliament of Ghana to witness firsthand the president's third State of the Nation address. One of such is a former Prime Minister, a member of Parliament for Peru, is Dr. Keminni. Doc, you're welcome to GH1.
Thank you.
Let's zoom in and talk about your sector, energy. The recent intermittent power outages. Have you taken notice? And if so, what could be the reason?
Yes, you cannot but notice the intermittent outages. And I believe these outages arise largely as a result of financial challenges of the sector. When the tariff reduction was effected by PURC, some of us cautioned that as popular as the decision was, it was not undergirded by sound economics. And this is the outcome of what we have in the energy sector, especially the power subsector, is in a major financial crisis that, if not addressed early enough, could plunge this country into uncharted waters.
Now, so when you talk about the energy sector being in crisis, what exactly are attributed for this crisis you talk about? What are the reasons?
First of all, 70–80% of the expenditure of the power sector is dollar denominated, yet their receivables are CD denominated. So any deterioration of the CD-dollar relationship impacts negatively. The other issue is the effect of the reduction on tariff. You see, the Ghanaian people may be entitled to an effective tariff or a lower tariff. However, that creates a funding gap, and the state had an obligation as the sole shareholder of these entities to inject capital to at least, at the minimum, close the funding gap. This was not done, and therefore the sector is bleeding. ECG is bleeding, VRA is bleeding, Greenco is bleeding. All players in the power sector, IPPs, are all bleeding, essentially because of a financial and liquidity squeeze.
Now, there are proposals on the table before the PURC for upward adjustment in tariffs. Do you envisage this will take care of the shortfall you talk about?
No, it wouldn't. There is fundamentally a need to re-inject capital, especially into the state-owned entities. The tariff will not inject that capital. The tariff will at best ameliorate the temporal operating financial challenges. But there's a fundamental problem of inadequate working capital, and that is the responsibility of the shareholder. Fortunately, unfortunately, the shareholder happens to be the Ghanaian state.
Now, the taking over of management of ECG by a private entity, don't you think this will at least take care of the capital injection you talk about? Because we're told that's what is expected to happen.
Not necessarily. If you look at the history of privatization or private sector operators across the developing world, it's a mixed story. A few countries have chucked some successes, the majority have not, because the underlying fundamentals impact both the local entity as well as the foreign participant. So if we do not address the underlying fundamentals, then we'll be playing musical chairs.
Now, the president, in about an hour's time, will be addressing the nation through Parliament. What are your expectations regarding the sector or generally?
Well, my number one expectation is that our president, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, will take the bull by the horn and address the security challenge of the nation. That is my number one priority, and that ought to be the number one priority of every government, to assure the safety and security of the nation states. My second priority is the financial meltdown. Especially the financial sector is in crisis will be an understatement. Whether it's the insurance, whether it's brokerage, whether it's banking, microfinance, the whole sector is in a mess. And the reform attempts are exacerbating the problem. And therefore, I expect His Excellency to address those two key issues.
You talk about the reform attempt exacerbating the problem. We're told this is a clean-up exercise, after which the banking sector will be on a very sound footing. The reason why we are pumping in so much of the taxpayers' money. You don't think there is light at the end of the tunnel?
No, if cleaning up ends up with a bigger mess that you started with, then there is a challenge. You see, the whole process was not well thought through, in my opinion. First of all, there is the need for Ghanaian businesses. The state has an obligation to ensure that Ghanaian businesses thrive. If any reform ends up reducing, diminishing indigenous businesses and promoting foreign-owned businesses, then we are in a crisis.
All right, so these are the expectations of our former Power Minister, Dr. Keminni. We're still coming to you live from Parliament, and this is the special coverage of the third edition of the State of the Nation address for President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. The dignitaries are still making their way into Parliament. I have a Deputy Information Minister here. Yes, she would want to talk. Yes, so basically, like I said, there's a special coverage of the State of the Nation address coming to you from Parliament. Some of the dignitaries, as I said earlier, have made their way into the chamber. To talk about the former President Mahama, who has made his way into the chamber to witness the address of the sitting President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Same can be said of former President Jerry John Rawlings. He's equally made his way to Parliament. We still are waiting the arrival of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, but the expectations are rife here, and they are mixed. When you speak to the minority, their expectations are, first of all, they want the president to speak to matters of security. They want a definite pronouncement in that regard. They want the president to equip the security services to be able to deal with these matters. I'm talking about the security happenings in the country. We talk about a definite pronouncement on activities of political party vigilante groups. We talk about, like I said, the murders that have been recorded, that have been termed as contract killings by the minority. Then you talk about jobs. They also expect the president to make some definitive pronouncement when it comes to job creation. They specifically cite the issue of NAPCO, arguing that even though that was a very laudable program that was rolled out by the government, we still have some beneficiaries agitating because their allowances have been delayed. Some are even threatening to hit the street if government does not pay their arrears. So they talk about the fact that no, government must not just roll out programs. There must be definitive budgetary lines to cater for these beneficiaries. So that is what job creation. And as you heard Dr. Keminni talk about, there's also an expectation coming from the minority that the president must start on the cleaning up exercise that has taken place within the banking sector, i.e. how much money has been expensed in that regard thereof. And then they also talk about the energy sector and thereof. Specifically, they talk about the GMPC and the matters arising, where we have the board chairman, Freddie Bole, and the CEO, Dr. KK Sapon, being loggerheads. In fact, they've written letters to each other that have made their way into the public domain, indicating that all is not well over that sector. In my engagement with Information Minister Kojo Oponkroma, he talks about the fact that these matters are being dealt with internally. Nonetheless, the minority is warning of dire consequences if these matters are not addressed. There's also the bit about the work program for GMPC that has been forwarded to Parliament. It's currently before the Finance Committee as well as the Committee on Mines and Energy. And they talk about one specific item, and that is the intention of the GMPC to borrow in excess of $250 million and give to the Energy Ministry for its expenditure. The minority argues that this is an illegality and that GMPC on its own cannot go to the capital market to borrow, and I must do so through the Finance Ministry. Honorable Atuforsen, the minority spokesperson on finance, makes us understand that if the GMPC is allowed to go ahead to do this, he's heading to court for interpretation. So that is the expectation of the minority. Now let's come to the majority. The majority is of the opinion that, listen, a lot has been achieved in the space of 2 years, 2 months of this Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia administration. They talk about one district, one dam. They talk about the free SHS, that they believe that the president should be able to give us a status update, not just that, the double track system that this nation has had to go through because there is no adequate infrastructure to take care of the number of students that are rolling onto the platform or the program. So they expect the president to give a definite timeline that this country will exit from the red-green track that many have described. I'm talking about the double track system. That they expect a definite timeline from the president. Not just that, they also expect that basically the president must speak to the increasing expenditure and how sustainable this program will be. So in essence, Keminni, the minority on one side paint a very gloomy picture. They don't expect much from the president. They expect the president to walk the talk, especially on the cedi when it comes to the economy. That the cedi is depreciating at a very faster rate that will erode any gain at all that this administration makes, and that must be arrested. When you flip the coin and go to the majority, they argue that a lot has been achieved. The president will take his time to point to these successes one after the other and also reassure the public or the Ghanaians that, listen, he has a leg on the situation and that at the end of his first year, and that's the tenure, I'm talking about the first term, many Ghanaians will have many things to celebrate for. So that is it. We're still awaiting the arrival of the president. Over to you, Keminni, in the studio.
Well, Ibrahim, thank you very much. If you just joined us, this is our live coverage of the State of the Nation Address 2019. Mind you, is the third for President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I will try as much as possible to bring you up to the second updates of events happening there. As you heard from IB, the president is yet to make his way there. We expect him to arrive there in the next hour or so. But he's absolutely right. Indeed, we are expecting the president to touch on a number of issues: the economy, security chiefly, the job creation, corruption, and issues from the GMPC, as he has mentioned. Beyond going to the capital markets, perhaps some people will be expecting the president to also address issues of corporate governance at the GMPC. We'll see how that pans out. But do join us from now till the president hits Parliament to read the State of the Nation address. But share with us, what is your State of the Nation? You can do so with the hashtag SONA 2019. We are on Facebook, GH1TV. We are also on Twitter, same handle. You can also share on my personal handle, Keminni, Amanor. Now, in a bit, we'll share with you other expectations from industry players. Now, you've seen from former Energy Minister Dr. Kwabena Donkor his expectation. You also heard from my colleague Dela Michelle, who shared with us events happening there and expectations generally of people she has encountered. In a moment, I'll introduce my guest to you. But if you do have anything to share with us, like I said, you can do so on our social media platform. My name is Keminni Amanor. Let me introduce my guest to you now, and then I'll show you a few things from previous SONAs. Well, I'm told that let's go see things from previous SONAs first. Our first one will be from 2017, when the president tells us we voted for change. It cannot be business as usual. Let's take a look at it.
The people of Ghana have voted for change. All the various arms of government should recognize this strong desire on the part of the people for change. We continue along the path of business as usual at our own risk.
Well, it cannot be business as usual. That was back in 2017. But is it? What are your opinions about it cannot be business as usual? Is it business as usual, or things have changed? Let's also bring you that playback where the president told us that I will not allow the economy to collapse under my watch.
We cannot continue this way with our public finances. And I will not allow this economy to collapse under my watch.
Well, so you heard it from the president. Again, I would ask, is it business as usual, or has he allowed the economy to collapse? What's your opinion? Because he told us he will not allow this economy to collapse under his watch. What is your own opinion about this? Now, that was back then. Present day, the president has arrived at Parliament to tell us what the state of the nation is as far as his management is concerned. Dela Michelle is there for us. She'll share with us briefly things happening there. Dela, the president has arrived. What else is happening?
Well, Keminni, I'll say that he just arrived and he's yet to get down from his car. But as you can see, his car is being led by the Guard of Honor that is being formed today by the Ghana Navy, and the contingent commander in charge is Lieutenant General Samuel Saba. And obviously, he's getting down from his car. If you can get that beautiful shot there, that is the President of the Republic of Ghana. The Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, together with his wife, First Lady of the Republic of Ghana, Mrs. Rebecca Na Okaiko Akufo-Addo, and they will be received, obviously would have the color escort, which will be presented to him by P.O. Kwao Richard and P.O. Apia Isaac Kwabena, after which he will be escorted into the Parliament House, where he's expected to deliver this year's State of the Nation's address. I would say that everyone in there is waiting to hear what this year's address is going to be about, looking at the issues that have come up, the economy, as we all know, the dollar against the cedi, we've all been witnesses to that, the security issues in the country, the topic, banned or not to disband vigilante group as well. They are also expecting that at least these three main things will feature in his State of the Nation's address. We've seen some former presidents here, including former President Mahama, former President Rawlings and his wife. They've also arrived there in the Parliament House, obviously waiting for the president to come and take his position. Now, let me just give you what we should expect once he enters the House. Of course, the majority and the minority leaders at the invitation of the Honorable Speaker will join the procession to receive the President and the Vice President to the House. Now, the Right Honorable Speaker will proceed to the central lobby, where he will receive the President and the Vice President. Of course, all those who are already seated, that is Honorable Members of Parliament, distinguished guests and others, are expected to resume their seat, after which we would hear the national anthem. The Speaker of Parliament will officially invite the President to the podium to give his statement or to give us his message, and as we know, he will take the podium in, let's say, 15 minutes from 10 to give us the State of the Nation's address. But currently, Keminni, if you can get that shot, if our viewers can see that also, that is the Guard of Honor, and there we have it, the national anthem being played just in front of the Parliament House to honor the arrival of the President of the Republic, after which we would have the color escort, which will be given over, and of course the color ensign by Lieutenant Joshua Amo Tete, after which the President will be escorted. We have seen the Inspector General of Police here, together with the colonels of the military as well as the Navy. Of course, from the Ghana Fire Service, they are also well represented here. We've seen his escorts, his aides, they are all around him. Some ministers have actually come out to escort him into the House. So And in our shot right now is P.O. Kwesi Richard preparing to give to the president the color of escort. Contingent Commander Lieutenant General Samuel Saba Saba.
Good morning, Mr. President. Guard of Honor Ponga, Bay Office, 96 Britain. Wave the Ghana Navy Regimental Flag on grade, ready for your inspection. Never Lieutenant Samuel Saba Saba, reporting, Mr. President. Aye, Mr. President.
So that is the inspection of the guard that has been formed by the Ghana Navy, the President together with the Contingent Commander, Lieutenant Samuel Saba Saba, together with the Inspector General of Police, as well as that of the military, inspecting the parade before being ushered into the house, where he will be accompanied by the Vice President of the Republic. I'm talking about Alhaji Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, where they'll be welcomed by both majority and minority in Parliament. And of course, the moment that we've all been waiting for, the President will deliver the message on the state of the nation. This is GH1's TV comprehensive coverage, coming to you live from the Parliament House. And what you're seeing right now is footages from right in front of the house as the president is inspecting the guard. As we've been saying earlier, this guard is formed by the Ghana Navy with the contingent commander, Lieutenant General Samuel Saba Saba. Diplomats are also seated in the house.
Well, you heard my colleague Delat Michel there taking us through events happening at Parliament where the president has just arrived. Now, in a moment, we'll go back and see how the president is being received at Parliament, where he's expected to deliver his third State of the Nation address. Again, just a quick reminder of some of the things that we've been hearing from our colleagues on the ground. The expectations are varied. We're expecting the president to touch on job creation, power, security. We also expect him to touch on corruption and many others. Let's take a listen to how people on the streets of Accra think the state of the nation is.
Obama is worth it because it's the state of a nation's address, and I'm a Ghanaian. I have to. As a citizen, they will say, "You be a course of mine, will be a who say no, say no." So what I say, I know I'm paying not to say any voting here. Then you see so. So almost all the road, a road from Nalergu to Bunkurgu, Yunyo, is just lying there. They are using it to politicize that. And every budget, every nation's address, they will tell us that the road from Nalergu to Bunkurgu, the road from Nalergu to Natanduri, as well as Sakogu, will do it, and they are not doing it. So it's like the nations of address, we Ghanaians or some of us are even fed up of it.
Now all the young men, they are becoming jobless. We just fold our hands. Our women will go and come before you cook something before you eat. So if you complain about the nation, you're not going to listen for us. So he can read, he can say his mind. We also say our mind. So he should listen for the people.
The system is very bad now. People are complaining here and there. People are not seeing top. The contractors have not been paid. So everybody is just hanging around, not doing nothing. And the sanitation system too is very poor. To come to my area, for instance, there's a lot of baggage packed on the street.
I say kidnapping and why because school especially
security and obeti we you or chabeti we you as a speech for no on where you might say any mammy.
Well, those are expectations on the streets. If you'd like to share yours with us, it's simple. Go onto Facebook or Twitter and use the hashtag SONA2019 on our page so we can quickly get to your messages. Now, let me get to my guests here in the studio. To my immediate right is Duncan Amanor. He's Executive Secretary for the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. And to his right is John Frinjua. He is Research Officer with Center for Democratic Development, the CDD. That is, good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us on this coverage.
Good morning.
John,
good morning, Keminni.
Yes. It sounds like a very good morning to you, is it?
Keminni, when you have the #1 gentleman of the land deliver an address as important as this one, you can only be hopeful that there may be some recap of, things that he had said in 2018, and there may also be further pronouncement of things that he is expecting to do for 2019 and beyond. And so for us, it's only happy, and we are hoping that by close of SONA 2019, some of the issues that we have raised latter part of 2018, early part of 2019, at least he may or would touch on some of them so that Ghanaian pockets could be a bit free. That's what we're looking to.
I'll come back to you, and then we take sector by sector what your expectations are. But generally, John,
yes,
what are you expecting from the president?
So yeah, so coming from the civil society think tank and network, I think that some of the things that we'll be looking at are the huge governance issues that the government is trying to deal with, and also, of course, the issues on the economy and security in general. These three are fundamental to us, and we want to really hear what the government has, what the president has on that.
I see. Now, in terms of governance, what are some of the issues that, from the civil society perspective, you expect him to touch on this morning?
We expect that he talks about the huge waste, government waste. We also expect that he talks about, economic governance.
Indeed.
So we just don't expect that he gives figures, but we also expect that he talks about the institutional structures, the legal structures that he intends or he has put in place to kind of curb some of these profligate spending.
Duncan, what are the core areas for you?
Well, for me, I'm looking at the state of the local currency. It's very important in petroleum numbers. If world market prices are stable and your local currency is weak, it would have an adverse effect on the pump prices. And then again, pump prices or fuel prices generally. We're going to see the government ease down on taxes further. Again, the luxury levy, Act 969, we are interested in seeing whether our demands or calls for some review will be attended to. Again, the economy generally.
Generally. Now,
the economy.
Because you have spoken about the levies, let's take a look at what industry people have been saying now. And I'll start with you, because you were one of the people we spoke with. And again, let me add that we spoke specifically to you, because in 2018 you were very active in demanding what is due the Ghanaian people, according to you, from the government. So let's take a look at what you have been telling us. And the first one, you say the president must be very much interested in ways of stopping the fuel smuggling syndicates, sapping us of needed revenue. Now, this is an issue you raised in 2018, an issue, again, which landed you in the courts, did it?
You see, Keminni, John mentioned the wastage. There's so much the system generates, but as to how much goes to the state, I mean, if you quantify that, I thought Imani last year was looking at some $3 billion. Some estimates I've seen elsewhere will put it at $5 billion. Monies that end up in pockets that do not deserve to have them. If you look at the petroleum smuggling issue, In 2016, we did about 850 million cedis loss. In 2017, we came to about 1.6 billion. In 2018, our initial projections were around 1.5 billion. Almost $300 million just gone into people's pockets. I mean, pockets that do not deserve to have them. When we need money for free SHS, we need money for good roads, we need money for even ambulances.
Very well. Let me just say that the president is seated in Parliament on the floor. He should take the floor in a moment and share with us the state of the nation. But we're still here in the studio discussing issues that came up the year before and those that have come up in the first quarter of 2019. But since he's not started talking, we'll go on. Did you follow that issue with the fuel smuggling?
No, I didn't really follow that issue. I don't know if that.
But obviously, it's a very disturbing.
It's a very disturbing issue.
Duncan, how did that end? You share with us. I know. I mean, the removal of the boss at the time.
Well, you see, that was even a micro aspect
of the issue.
There's still a bigger picture out there where fuel is smuggled into some yards, how the fuel gets to them. If they wanted to audit or get to them, they would find out. But generally, what is happening is that there are the known systems where fuel should get to the country. And then there are other systems where people bypass the system just to make money for themselves and their pockets. These money should have gone straight to the state, because when you...
Telling us, if you could take a look at that quickly, just before the president starts to talk in Parliament. We've been talking to Guta. Guta has raised issues about foreign traders, has raised issues about taxes, import duties that are still high. Guta has raised issues about security. You can't do business if you do not have great security in the country. That is the state of the nation. That's the state of the nation for Guta. We've also spoken with the Greek people. We'll take a look at that in a moment. I'm told that the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Mike Okwe, is speaking. Let's take a listen.
Traditional and religious leaders, eminent citizens of our country, my wife Alberta, of all political parties in the Republic.
Who got me saying?
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, here present. Honorable members, His Excellency, the President, is in the House this morning in accordance with Article 67 of the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana to deliver his message on the state of the nation. On behalf of the leadership, honorable members and officers of this House, it is my singular honor to welcome His Excellency, the President, to this House. And now, I respectfully invite His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to deliver his message on the state of our nation. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, glad to be here with you again in this august house, the Parliament of our Republic, to perform for the third time the pleasant duty of fulfilling my constitutional obligation by giving honorable members and the Ghanaian people a message on the state of the nation.
In accordance with protocol and convention, it's good to see the First Lady Rebecca Akufo-Addo, Vice President Muhammadu Bawumia, Second Lady Samira Bawumia, spouse of Mr. Speaker Mrs. Alberta Okoye, Chief Justice Sophia Akufo, and Justices of the Supreme Court, Chairperson Nana Utusibo II and members of the Council of State, Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Obi Akwa, Inspector General of Police David Asante Pietu, and service chiefs are all present. Speaker, the House is duly honored by the welcome attendance of the former Presidents of the Republic, the first and fourth Presidents of the Fourth Republic, Their Excellencies Jerry John Rawlings and John Dramani Mahama, former First Lady, Her Excellency Nana Konadu Ajiman Rawlings, and the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps. Mr. Speaker, the House will also take note of the passing last year of some distinguished citizens of our country. Vice President Kwesi Bekoe Amisa Arthur, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, Senior Minister J.H. Mensah, Justice of the Supreme Court Justice V.C.R.A.C. Crabb, PND Secretary Mr. K.B. Asante, and the Poet Laureate Professor Atukwe Okai. May their souls rest and abide in the bosom of the Almighty until the last day of the resurrection, when we shall all meet again. Amen. Speaker, I hope the House will bear with me, as I have a lot to say, and I may take quite some time. A month ago, almost to the day, I was in Yendi, fittingly attired as a self-proclaimed Prince of Gabon, Prince Abudani, the first of that lineage, to witness the installation of Yana Muhammad Abukari II as the overlord of Gabon. Thousands of our compatriots were there to share in the joy of the occasion. It was a ceremony that many had despaired we would ever see. But a new Yana, accepted by the two gates of Abudu and Andani, was installed on that day. It brought to an end decades of feuding that laid low the proud and ancient kingdom of Gabon. It was a happy day, and it marked the climax of a long, tortuous journey and a hard grind on the part of many people through the years. 2 years ago, when I had the honor to become president of our country, I decided to summon all the resources of the state and my own energies and make a concerted effort through the dedicated patriotic committee of eminent chiefs that had been working on the problem for the last 17 years to find an acceptable solution. With the blessings of the Almighty, we had a breakthrough, and this led to the month-long series of events that will climax in the installation on 25th January 2019. So, Speaker, I was not looking to be accorded any special title or accolade, and I was certainly not looking for praise. I did want to do whatever I could to make sure that this long-running sore that was such a blight on Gabon and Ghana, and which dragged down the development process in our country, could be resolved and we could move on. We'd spent enough emotional stress, enough time, enough energy, and enough money on the Gabon dispute. I wanted that amount of emotion, that time, that energy, and that money to be spent on trying to make Gabon and Ghana prosperous. I'm grateful for the hard work and wisdom of the eminent chiefs, the Tufu Setutu II, the Santehene, the Nairi, Na Bohugu Abdullahi Mahami Sheriga, overlord of Mamprugu, and the Yabongura, to Tumba Boresa Sulemana Jakba, overlord of the Ganja state, all of whom I salute, and for the support of many people in this house on both sides. And I pray that we all continue to build on this achievement and midwife the process until peace becomes part of the fabric of Gabon. The Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs intends to use the momentum of the Gabon settlement to tackle the other protracted chieftaincy disputes in the country, hopefully, for resolution. Mr. Speaker, in order to reinforce and support the process of reconciliation and the restoration of peace in Gabon, I have decided that this year, the official 62nd Independence Day celebration will be held in Tamale on 6th March. This will be the first time in our nation's history that the celebration is being held outside of our national capital of Accra, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Mr. Speaker, this past week, the grounds of Jubilee House, the seat of our nation's presidency, have resounded to a lot of celebrations as we mark the handing over ceremonies of the constitutional instruments to the 6 new regions in our country. It has taken 18 months of very hard work and very complicated maneuvering to get to where we are today. Again, the requests and agitations for creation of new regions have been long-standing, but we have somehow never got around to dealing with them. The first petition for the creation of OT region, for example, dates back to 1954. Mr. Speaker, it was time to deal with these outstanding issues so that we could go ahead with the business of developing our country. The creation of the 6 new regions opens up the country and ensures that no one feels cut off from the center. Mr. Speaker, no corner of this country is being left behind. It is for this reason that we have created the 3 developmental authorities. It is for this reason that we have realigned the national budget to ensure that every constituency gets to see the equivalent of $1 million a year for priority projects. Mr. Speaker, I'm able to state, and every member of this House should be able to testify, that work is going on in each of the 275 constituencies around the country. The water and toilet provision segment of the Special Development Initiative is taking place in every constituency. We came into office with a plan, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to say that we're working and delivering in accordance with that plan. Mr. Speaker, now that the regions are in place, we have the singular opportunity to avoid the old mistakes of urban planning that have made some of our towns and cities such unattractive places. The lessons will seem to show that the political capital does not necessarily have to be the site of all the institutions, and this will guide us in the setting up of the new regions. Indeed, when designating the capitals of the new regions at the ceremonies at Jubilee House last week, I made it clear the government is committed to the equitable distribution of government structures and institutions across the regions. We will keep to the commitment. Mr. Speaker, we have also embarked on another aspect of our ambitious decentralization program, that is the exercise to expand full democracy to local government. In addition to the creation of 38 municipal and district assemblies and the elevation of 29 districts to the status of municipalities, the bill for the amendment of Article 55(3) of the Constitution has been gazetted to pave way for the direct popular election on partisan basis of metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives. It is expected that a referendum will be held on the bill alongside the unit assembly and district level elections in 2019. I am calling respectfully, Mr. Speaker, for a repetition of the bipartisan support that made possible the hugely successful outcomes in the referenda for the new regions to ensure the success of the impending referendum. Furthermore, a multidisciplinary panel of experts is being assembled to plan, cost, schedule, and help implement a roadmap for the election of MMDCEs. We are committed to devolving more and more power to the Ghanaian people. Mr. Speaker, the economy is at the heart of all we seek to do. It is the success of the economy that will guarantee an improvement in the quality of the life of our people. I believe we are now all agreed that the fundamentals have to be sound if the economy is to flourish. We've just concluded a program with the IMF, and with continuing discipline, we shall sign off from the deal in April. This is the 16th time Ghana has had to go to the IMF in the 62 years of our independence. Mr. Speaker, we cannot make the progress we all desire unless we are consistent and disciplined in the management of our economy. The yo-yo nature of the boom and bust has not helped us achieve our goal of sustained prosperity and lift us out of poverty. We have gone through another round of painful impositions to get to where we are today with healthy fundamentals. Mr. Speaker, production in the economy as measured by real GDP growth has picked up very strongly in the last 2 years. From 3.4% in 2016, real GDP growth increased to 8.1% in 2017. In 2018, provisional data for the first 3 quarters indicate a strong real GDP growth of 6%, higher than the annual target of 5.6%. Real GDP growth for 2019 is forecast at 7.6%. Ghana's recent GDP growth has placed it among the highest in the world. The fiscal deficit is being brought down from the 7.3 of rebased GDP in 2016 to a provisional 3.9% of GDP at the end of 2018. The debt to GDP ratio has declined from the 56.6% of GDP in 2016 to 54.8% at the end of 2018. Inflation has dropped from 15.4% at the end of 2016 to 9% in January this year, the lowest in 6 years, as announced by the Ghana Statistical Service last week. Interest rates are declining, and so is the Bank of Ghana monetary policy rate. Our trade balance account, for the first time in more than a decade, recorded a surplus in 2017 and is expected to remain in surplus. In May 2018, a $2 billion Eurobond was issued for 30 and 10 years of $1 billion each, with coupon rates of 8.62% and 7.62% respectively. And these were the lowest rates and the longest maturity in our history, signifying confidence in the economy. It comes as no surprise, therefore, that today Ghana is the leading recipient of foreign direct investment in West Africa. Mr. Speaker, these are good figures. And as we prepare to exit from the IMF program in April, we expect impressive figures and good performance to continue. We are very much aware that this is not the first time we have had such a good set of figures, but we're determined to do things differently this time around. We have imposed on ourselves fiscal discipline, we're paying off legacy debts, and deepening good governance practice, and business confidence is growing. We will maintain the discipline and bring progress to our country. We've decided to institute a legal framework to help with the discipline. We've passed the Fiscal Responsibility Law, Act 982, capping the deficit by law. And some 2 weeks ago, I inaugurated the Presidential Fiscal Responsibility Advisory Council, chaired by the eminent respected economist, Dr. Paul Akwa, former governor of the Bank of Ghana and former deputy director of the Africa Department of the IMF, with some of the finest and most reputable economists of our country as members. Its purpose is to advise the President on relevant additional measures needed to maintain fiscal discipline. We have done this because we know the temptation to go on a spending binge will always be there. We know election years will come around and there will be pressure on government to splurge, and persuasive arguments will be made that you have to stay in government to be able to implement your programs. However, I am bent on running a responsible administration, mindful of the next generation and not merely the next election. In the meantime, our efforts are bearing some fruits, and the world has taken notice of the improvement in our economic fundamentals. In September last year, after almost a decade, we received our first sovereign credit rating upgrade from Standard & Poor's, S&P. This upgrade saw us move from B- to B with a stable outlook. In December 2018, we also hosted the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Madam Christine Lagarde. A visit that was historical in every sense, as this was the first time that an IMF Managing Director had ever stepped foot on Ghanaian soil. Mr. Speaker, revenue mobilization poses the biggest challenge in the management of our economy, with the tax exemption policy in particular proving to be an Achilles heel and a growing menace to fiscal stability and revenue generation. In the last 8 years, tax exemptions in respect of import duty, import VAT, import NHIL, and domestic VAT have grown from 392 million cedis, that is 0.6% of GDP in 2010, to 4.6 billion cedis, that is 1.6% of GDP in 2018. These figures do not include exemptions from the payment of corporate and individual income taxes, concessions on tax rates, petroleum tax reliefs, customs tax exemptions enjoyed by diplomatic missions, and waiver of processing. In less than 16 years, half of Ghana's revenue. Mr. Speaker, we intend to do something about it to reverse the trend by introducing suitable measures that may disrupt the easy and comfortable arrangements that many have become accustomed to, but which we have to take to ensure that we have the firmest of foundations for the economic takeoff that has escaped us for so long. Mr. Speaker, workers in the public sector began the year on a good note after receiving a 10% increase in their salaries, on top of the 11% increment of 2018. 41,000 workers in the informal sector were also enrolled onto Tier 3 pension schemes, with pensioners seeing an average increment of 11% in their monthly pension schemes, with the lowest income bracket receiving a 14.7% increment. Last year, the Youth Employment Agency, YEA, engaged some 107,000 youth in various employment modules, with an additional 125,000 set to be engaged this year. Mr. Speaker, to consolidate further the relations between the social partners in the post-IMF era, The government will shortly sign a landmark social partnership agreement with organized labor, the Trades Union Congress, the Ghana Employers Association and government, represented by the Ministries of Finance and Employment and Labor Relations, to provide a medium for building a sense of cohesion, trust, self-management, frank and open discussions to champion the cause of development. Speaker, the fight against child labor has chalked some modest success. Through the implementation of the second phase of the National Action Plan of Action 2017-2021, Ghana has been moved up from the Tier 2 watch list position of the Trafficking in Persons report to Tier 2 in 2018. So, Speaker, our ports remain important national assets, and we must manage them to improve trade and to the benefit of all Ghanaians. The government has introduced reforms at the port to improve efficiency. Among others, we introduced the paperless operations of the ports, and goods can be cleared within 1 to 3 days. Going forward, we have set ourselves the goal of making our ports the most competitive in West Africa. In this regard, some further reforms will soon be announced by government to enhance the competitive position of Ghana's ports and impact on the cost of living in our country. Ghana may be the toast of the world because of its economy. We've all accepted that these economic fundamentals are the foundation upon which our people will become prosperous. But if they are uneducated or poorly educated, then prosperity will continue to elude them. Speaker, a sudden injection of oil revenue or a rise or fall in the price of gold or cocoa can make a dramatic difference to your financial situation. But there are no shortcuts to having an educated and skilled workforce. We have no choice but to provide our young people with quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for every Ghanaian. It is the only way to ensure prosperity and to protect our democracy. We are not sparing any efforts to make education in Ghana of the best quality and fit for the needs of the 21st century. In September 2019, a new standard-based curriculum will be rolled out from kindergarten to class 6 in primary schools. This curriculum has drawn upon the best practices from all over the world and will focus on making Ghanaian children confident, innovative, creative thinking, digitally literate, well-rounded patriotic citizens. Mathematics, science, reading, writing, and creativity are therefore at the heart of this new curriculum. Mr. Speaker, poverty should not be an excuse for any Ghanaian child not to reach their full potential. It therefore warms my heart that we are now able to say that education in the public sector is free from kindergarten to senior high school, and that this year legislation will be passed to redefine basic education to include senior high school. Young people have to have options on which career path they choose, and I'm glad to announce that all is set for the construction of 10 state-of-the-art technical and vocational education training centers this year. For far too long, we've preached about the importance of TVET without doing very much to demonstrate this importance. We send or urge young people to go to poorly equipped TVET centers, and we're surprised that they are not keen. The new TVET centers will be world-class and attractive to assure young people that they are not being sent to second-best options. We're also bent on demystifying science, mathematics, and technology. 10 science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM centers are being built around the country to provide support for the introduction of STEM into basic education after the completion of a successful pilot phase. We can be sure, therefore, that Ghana's young people will be able to acquire skills that will put them at par with their peers anywhere in the world. The importance of science, technology, innovation has led me to appoint a Presidential Advisory Council on Science, Technology, and Innovation to advise the President on how to infuse the application of science and technology in the development of our nation. A council headed by distinguished scientist, Professor Edward Ayinso. Speaker, we shall bring before Parliament this year a tertiary education policy bill that will bring all the public universities under a common law and make the administration of the public universities less cumbersome. Mr. Speaker, a well-motivated and remunerated teacher is at the center of our quality education and comprehensive teacher policy. This has started with the upgrading of the initial teacher education certificate to degree status and the move to put the teaching profession up there with other professions in terms of respect and exclusivity. Currently, many of our teachers who complete the 3-year diploma in basic education at our colleges of education go on later to do a 2-year top-up first degree by distance learning at the University of Cape Coast. This means that in addition to the extra amount of money spent on getting a degree, it will take them not less than 5 years to get one. With the introduction of the 4-year Bachelor of Education degree, teacher trainees will now obtain their first degree at the end of their schooling. This ensures that they enter the teaching service as university graduates. Mr. Speaker, when our children master the connection between science and their everyday lives, we would reach the stage in Ghana where we would be rid of the many diseases born of filth and poor hygiene that are still part of those. We need to remind ourselves repeatedly that health is wealth, and it is only a healthy population that can make Ghana prosperous. In May 2018, Ghana won accolades at the World Health Assembly for having eradicated trachoma, an eye disease that has plagued us for a long time. Today, our national health insurance scheme is buoyant. The government has paid up the 1.2 billion arrears we inherited and brought the operations of the NHIS back to life. On 19th December 2018, the introduction of mobile renewal of membership was launched. Since then, there have been on average 70,000 members renewing their membership every week by dialing *929# on any mobile network. Soon, in collaboration with the National Identification Authority, Ghanaians will be able to register, renew, and government granted financial clearance for the recruitment of 11,118 health personnel to increase existing clinical staff. To augment the efforts of clinical staff, in September 2018, the Ministry of Health received further financial clearance to employ 14,524 nurse assistants, clinical and preventive. These These nurse assistants belong to the tranche that passed their exams in 2016 from government health training institutes and have commenced to work by 1st February 2019. The Ministry of Health is working to obtain financial clearance for the recruitment of the 2017 and 2018 graduates. The health delivery system will be significantly strengthened by the expected arrival in June of 275 ambulances, i.e. one per constituency, to make treatment of emergency cases more effective. Drone technology has also been introduced into that system to help deliver essential medicine, blood, and blood products to remote communities. We still face problems of inadequate infrastructure in our health establishments. We have problems of numerous structures at various stages of completion that cannot be finished and brought into use because newer structures are being started and there's no money to finish the ones started earlier. To speak again, this is a long-standing problem that is a mark of our underdevelopment. We will not ignore or sweep the problem under the carpet. We're dealing with it and we will complete them. Ghana's hard-working nurses and doctors will do their best, as they have always done, to make sure we get the best health care. But it behoves on each one of us to look after ourselves better. Apart from exercising and taking our regular health checkups seriously, it is imperative that we eat healthy diets to prevent diseases that are caused by short choices of nutrition. Mr. Speaker, when we're dealing with matters of good health, we must necessarily move on to shelter and housing. There is an acute shortage of user-friendly, decent housing for people in middle and low-income brackets in our country. This is a long-standing problem that gets worse with each passing day. It is time to tackle the issue and find a resolution. We're starting with the completion of the many abundant projects dotted around the country. A consortium of local banks has raised $51 million to fund the completion of the social housing units started by the Kufuor administration in 2006 at Koforidua, Tamale, and Ho. The Saglemi housing project, started under the last NDC government, is also high on our list of priorities this year. The 5,000 units it offers will boost our housing numbers. We're therefore establishing the value for money issue surrounding the project in order to reconcile the number of houses built with the schedule of payments made and accelerate delivery. The 2019 budget made provision for the construction of 200,000 housing units and a database of local and foreign developers that has been created to help make this policy a reality. Land banks have also been secured in several towns across Ghana, with factories producing prefabricated building materials can be cited for this huge construction effort. There are many well-intentioned projects that ended up pricing out the low-income earners who were supposed to be their beneficiaries. We're determined to learn the lessons from past projects. The Ministry of Finance is working to launch a 1 billion Ghana cedi housing fund that would target low-income earners. Mr. Speaker, government will continue with the other housing projects with the police, armed forces, and government workers across the country through agencies like the State Housing Corporation. The most exciting news on the housing landscape, though, is the drafting of plans to regenerate Nima, which holds the dubious title of being Accra's first slum. It has, of course, progressed very much since those early days, even if it has been unable to shake off the urban slum title. I'm a proud resident of Nima myself. And I'm extremely excited that the regeneration plans will not dislodge or dispossess residents, but rather transform Nima into a well laid out residential area with full amenities. I'm looking forward to it. Good work that is being done by the Ministries of Inner City and Zongo Development and Works and Housing. Another big problem is that of poor drainage in our towns and cities, which leads to flooding during the rainy season. Then there's the serious problem of sea erosion along the coast that endangers the lives of our coastal people. It is time to deal with these long-term problems and find long-lasting solutions, and we're doing just that. The Odona storm drains in Accra, which have caused many tragedies over the years, are now being re-engineered by a team of experts who will give it a permanent fix. The Ditchamso drainage system is also on our list of priorities, and a bid has been put out for experts to transform it into a more efficient system. Our ongoing coastal protection projects are proceeding in Adjoa in the western region, Lekusu, New Takrady Phase 2 in Elmina, Dansoman, Axim, and Disco. This year, we'll also begin others in Amalfo Kuma, Dansoman Phase 2, Komenda, Anomabo, Cape Coast, Mensa Guinea, Ningo Prampram, New Takrady Phase 3, Apam, Kokrobite, Botiano, Blekusu Phase 2, and Abuaze Shama Phase 2. Maritime University, Nongwa, Takrady, Anyanui, and Isipon. Mr. Speaker, we're putting in place plans to avert the perennial flooding caused by the spillage of the Bagri Dam, which has resulted in the constant loss of lives and property over the years. In the short term, the salting of the White Vulture will be undertaken this year, in conjunction with discussions with the Burkinabés to regulate the flow of the spillage and mitigate its impact. The Ministry of Works and Housing will, in the coming week, receive a report on a feasibility study conducted by the Chinese company Sinohydro for the construction of the dam at Pualugu to serve as a receptacle to hold the volume of water spilled from the Bakri Dam for irrigation purposes and also for the generation of electricity. This will be the permanent solution to the Bagri Dam problem. The requisite approvals will be sought by the Ministry from Cabinet and Parliament to permit the beginning of the construction of the Pualugu Dam. Mr. Speaker, if there's been any government that has been on the side of persons with disabilities, it is my government. We have increased the share of the District Assembly's Common Fund to persons with disabilities from 2% to 3%. And we have also ensured the implementation of our pledge of employing 50% of the persons who manage the country's toll booths from amongst persons with disabilities. That's how. Mr. Speaker, we're continuing with initiative to improve the creative arts sector. We've also worked to finalize the Creative Arts Bill, leading to the setting up of the Creative Arts Fund. For the first time in 2018, the government provided support to the Creative Arts Council and the Creative Arts Masterclass to build capacity of creative arts practitioners has also commenced. The Eastern Regional Theatre has been completed, and work is currently ongoing towards the construction of the Kumasi Theatre. Mr. Speaker, considering how often Ghana is in the news, usually for good reasons, we have not been able to attract as many visitors to our country as we should. We're making a special effort from now onwards to attract tourists into our country. Under the See Ghana, Eat Ghana, Wear Ghana, and Feel Ghana campaign, The Ghana Tourism Authority recorded a 20% growth since its launch to over 600,000 visitations to various tourist sites. The World Bank has approved a $40 million grant to support the Tourism Ministry and its agencies to help upgrade tourist facilities. In September 2018, in Washington, D.C., in front of the Congressional Black Caucus of the United States Congress, I proclaimed 2019 as the year of return, commemorating the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first 20 West African slaves in the Commonwealth of Virginia, in what was to become the United States of America. We intend to use the symbolism of this year of return to bring together Africans, persons of African descent, and all well-wishers and lovers of freedom to strengthen the commitment to ensuring that the blots in our history, i.e. the transatlantic slave trade and slavery, never reoccur. In response to this proclamation, some 70 African-American Hollywood celebrities visited Ghana over the Christmas in December 2018. The year-long campaign, being coordinated by the Ghana Tourism Authority, is expected to increase arrivals considerably. Training across the entire tourism sector is also receiving priority. The Hospitality Training Institute has been renovated and reopened in July 2018 to provide needed training in the hospitality and tourism sectors. Under a tourism attractions upgrade project, several tourist sites, including Elmina Heritage Bay, Axin Fort St. Antonio, at St. Mansur Slave River, Tetekwashi Cocoa Farm, Bunsu Abrutun, Kintampo Waterfalls are undergoing upgrades. The draft legislative instrument on sites and attractions is currently undergoing final stakeholder consultations. This will ensure world-class standards are set and maintained at all tourism sites and attractions. Mr. Speaker, the greatest attraction of our country is its people. Yes, we have castles and forts, we have waterfalls and dramatic mountain ranges, we have breathtaking beaches and historical sites that reduce visitors to strong emotions. But it is the people of Ghana and our welcome attitude that are the strongest attractions to visitors. We should never forget that we all have a responsibility to make visitors to our country feel welcome. In this year of return, when we have invited the world to visit, I would urge each one of us to make a special effort to make a visit to our country a memorable one. Our music, our foods, our clothes, and the quintessential Akwaba smile will make a visitor to our country come back again and again. Mr. Speaker, but there are things that many of us do that will put off any visitor from visiting our country, no matter how attractive the geography or the history might be. I refer especially to some of our sanitation habits. Mr. Speaker, public resources must be channeled into ventures that generate wealth and not spent on avoidable expenditures. The cost of clearing and cleaning up our cities and towns after those who litter has become prohibitive. The littering habit seems to be more predominant in the cities and urban areas and mercifully largely absent in the villages. Last year, I reiterated before you my pledge of improving sanitation in the country and making Accra the cleanest city in Africa by the end of my term. I said by the end of my term. Speaker, there's been a significant improvement in sanitation, even though I acknowledge more can be done. However, this is currently the state of play. We've witnessed an increase in the coverage of solid waste management from 16% to 53%. And over the course of last year, 35,862 household toilets were built, as opposed to 1,698 in 2016. We'll intensify our efforts at making Accra a clean city. In 2019, apart from continuing with educating and sensitizing people, we intend to use the bylaws to enforce cleanliness. The Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Sanitation are working together to try sanitation offenses. People who litter would be tried and punished, and so would those who steal litter bins from our streets. We're launching a national sanitation brigade to help us carry this out. And through this vehicle, we will not only keep our towns and cities clean, but will also provide jobs for our young people. Once waste is properly and efficiently managed, we can then explore how to use the waste collected to advance the economy of our nation. A cursory look around our cities and towns will show us that plastic filth is our biggest problem. We intend to solve this problem through the internationally recognized priorities of waste: reduction first, followed by reuse, recycle, recovery, and lastly disposal, which is to be avoided whenever possible. Government has prepared a plastics management policy with the overarching aim of meeting the challenges of comprehensive plastic management. About 82% of Ghana's plastic waste would be readily recovered and recycled with existing technologies into value addition products in high demand locally and within the West African region. A vibrant recycling industry in Ghana could recover nearly 1 million tons of waste plastics from the environment and landfills annually to be recycled into basic need products valued at 2 billion cedis per year, creating many jobs across the economy. Currently, extensive discussions are being concluded with investors on the most sustainable options available to rid Ghana of this plastic filth menace. Mr. Speaker, we're also tackling the problem of electronic waste head-on. On August 20, 2018, I launched the National E-Waste Program to mark the commencement of two key provisions of the Hazardous and Electronic Waste Control and Management Act 917. These provisions empower the external service provider, SGS, to verify, assess, and collect the advanced recycle eco fee on all electrical and electronic equipment from all exporting countries, and also to establish a state-of-the-art recycling facility at Agbobishi, whose construction will begin in April. Not only will we solve the problem of waste disposal in an environmentally friendly manner, setting up the recycling facility will lead to the creation of over 20,000 direct jobs through the establishment of associated holding centers in each regional capital and collection centers in each district. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that in 2019 we'll still have to revisit this topic. But open defecation cannot be a characteristic of a country that is working to be transformed economically and to be counted amongst the developed nations of the world. That is why it is absolutely imperative that we make a success of our one house, one toilet policy. The community-led total sanitation program is being implemented in over 4,500 communities in 130 districts to achieve open defecation-free communities. And we must continue with that program. Mr. Speaker, Affordable and reliable energy is absolutely critical to realizing our vision of economic transformation. I'm happy to announce that gas production tripled during the year from 100 to 300 million cubic feet per day. The Ministry of Energy is undertaking steps to remove the transmission bottlenecks, to ensure that Ghanaian gas can reach power plants located in the eastern part of the country. And I'm confident that by August this year, the situation would have been fully remedied to ensure Ghana uses locally produced gas for the bulk of its thermal power generation, saving substantial amounts of foreign exchange on imported fuels. Government is committed to achieving an electricity generation mix that ensures diversity and security of energy supply. For this reason, we will continue to promote the deployment of renewable energy in line with our policy target of 10% renewables in the energy mix from the current 1%. Another justification for renewable energy is that in spite of Ghana's excess electricity generation capacity, we can still not achieve our universal access target because there are many Ghanaian communities, especially those on islands and lakesides, that cannot be reached through the national grid. For example, there are currently 200 island and 2,000 lakeside communities that require mini-grids from renewable sources to meet their energy needs. To reduce government's expenditure on utilities and also promote the use of solar power for government and public buildings, the Ministry of Energy initiated the Solar Rooftop Program. The ministry is leading by example with the installation of a 65-kilowatt solar rooftop system at its premises. Jubilee House, Mr. Speaker, will also be powered as from August this year by solar energy. As an example to other public institutions. In fact, Ghana's government's target is to install up to 200 megawatts of distributed solar power by 2030 in both residential and non-residential facilities in order to reduce government's liabilities to ECG PDS Ghana Limited. Renewable energy has also become a necessary addition to our energy sector because it has become increasingly cheaper and is key to the implementation of our international obligations under Sustainable Development Goal number 7 on access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy, as well as Sustainable Development Goal 13 on urgent action to combat climate change. There's been good news, Mr. Speaker, with the recent announcement by Aker Energy of one of the biggest oil finds in Africa. Mr. Speaker, this has led me to think that an MPP government must be good for Ghana. After many years of our looking and almost giving up, it took an MPP government to discover oil in 2007. In 8 years of NDC administration, 13 oil blocks were signed and not a single one was developed. The first one signed in 2017 under my government, which was with Aker, has led to the second biggest oil discovery in Africa. Enough to make a believer of anyone, I might say. Mr. Speaker, there's no avoiding the fact that the oil industry, unfortunately, has a reputation for corruption. Since the discovery of oil in our country, there's been heightened anxiety amongst our people that we do not fall into the same trap of the oil money benefiting individual officials to the detriment of the state and the general public. On the fight against corruption in the oil industry and to aid transparency, we've established a national register of contracts on which all the petroleum agreements signed by the government have been published. This provides a platform for citizens to scrutinize the oil contract signed by government and accords with international call for contract transparency. We've also signed the General Petroleum Regulations, which provide for the disclosure of beneficial ownership information of companies operating in Ghana's oil and gas industry. This will ensure that people do not hide in the shadows to appropriate oil blocks to themselves at the expense of the citizens of our country. The interest of major oil companies in Ghana has become dramatic. Today, oil companies such as the American giant ExxonMobil and the Norwegian conglomerate Aker have signed petroleum exploration agreements with Ghana. Through the launch of the Ghana oil and gas licensing rounds of 2018, the bidding process for the allocation of new petroleum rights to prospective investors, the first such exercise in our history, other global players such as BP, China National Oil, Offshore Oil Corporation, and Total have expressed interest in coming to Ghana. Mr. Speaker, be it in the oil industry or manufacturing or retail, every day demonstrates the urgent need for our own businesses to develop and flourish. We have put in place the mechanisms to train young entrepreneurs and to help establish businesses with a stimulus package to expand their companies. Under the Presidential Support Program, 1,350 startups and small businesses have benefited from the Special Government Business Support Program. Beneficiaries receive between 10,000 and 100,000 CDs each at a special interest rate of 10% instead of the average prevailing market rate of 26%. This is designed to help grow and expand their businesses and will create about 30,000 direct jobs. 18,000 jobs have already been created under this program. This is the first time in Ghana's history that there's been a deliberate, systematic, and coherent national support for startups and small businesses. Businesses which benefited included agro-business and agro-processing, information communication and technology, tourism and recreation, sanitation and waste management, health, food and beverages, green and ecological businesses, sports and real estate. Already established businesses are also receiving help, with an amount of 230 million Ghana cedis being disbursed among 16 companies under the stimulus package. This has led to the creation of 8,500 to 10,000 direct and indirect jobs. Proof, if someone needed, that we're getting something right and generating the right atmosphere to attract foreign business, has come with the announcement that three major international automobile manufacturers, Volkswagen, Nissan, and Sinotruk, have signed MOUs to establish assembling plants in our country. Renault is also conducting feasibility studies on establishing an assembly plant in Ghana, as is Toyota. We will outdoor in March the National Automotive Policy spelling out the terms, conditions, and incentive package for participating in Ghana's new automobile industry, which will also apply to indigenous car assembly companies. Mr. Speaker, our local textile industry has been struggling for years, and many textile companies have indeed gone under. We have decided to give it a major stimulus to help put it on a strong footing. The local textile industry has therefore been granted a zero-rated VAT on the supply of locally made textiles for a period of 3 years. We have put in place a tax cut regime for both locally manufactured and imported textiles to address the challenge of pirated designs and logos in the textiles trade. The Tema Port has been designated as a single entry corridor for the importation of textile prints, with a textile task force in place to ensure effective compliance and reduce, if not wholly eliminate, smuggling of imported textiles. A new textile import management system has been instituted, also to control importations of textiles. Mr. Speaker, the one district, one factory policy has taken off. And 79 factories under the scheme are at various stages of operation or construction. Another 35 are going through credit appraisal. All told, there's a lot of activity going on under the scheme, and it has awoken the interest of young people to go into manufacturing business. Under the Rural Enterprises Program, funded by the African Development Bank and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, 50 small-scale processing factories will be established by the end of the year in 50 districts across the country, particularly in areas where there's evidence of significant post-harvest losses. These will be owned and managed by organized youth groups with technical support from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Mr. Speaker, small and medium-scale enterprises form the base of businesses in our country, and financing has been the bane of their operations. MASLOC was established in 2006 to meet a critical need by providing the type of small-scale loans needed by these small-scale enterprises at reasonable rates. Sadly, MASLOC was undermined by base political considerations and endemic corruption, and the center was almost run down completely. I'm glad to report that MASLOC has been revamped and is getting back to do what it was set up to do. There's been strict adherence to credit procedures and prudent management of the credit recovery process. These have resulted in a recovery rate of 89% of loans administered under a pilot scheme introduced in 2017. MASLOC was given an amount of 35 million CDs in October 2008 to 18 for disbursement. This is the first time an amount of such magnitude has been given to the center outside of an election year. Of the 35 million Ghana cedis that were received, the center has disbursed 20,563,100 Ghana cedis, with 14,317,200 cedis to be disbursed for pending applications which have been approved. So far, 87% of the monies disbursed have gone to women, to 24,582 women. The 2016 MPP manifesto promised to allocate 50% of MASLOC funds to women, and we have surpassed this by a long margin. It has obviously been noticed that interesting things are happening at the successfully restructured MASLOC, and that is why the center was allocated an amount of 200 million cedis in the 2019 budget. Such an amount is unprecedented in the history of MASLOC. In 2019, MASLOC will give increased attention to youth startup businesses, the vegetable farming, poultry, piggery, and fish farming. Mr. Speaker, the incidence of bad government methods that almost collapsed MASLOC has unfortunately affected the running of many businesses generally, and the financial sector in particular. The banking sector has gone through what can only be described as a traumatic upheaval. Again, Mr. Speaker, the woes of the banking sector have also been a case of long-standing bad practices that was previously been able to deal with, which we are now having to deal with in the most painful manner. The cleanup has cost the National Treasury 12.7 billion cedis, money we can ill afford, but which was necessary to sanitize the sector, minimize job losses, and protect deposits of 1,147,336 Ghanaians and their businesses and the people they employ. The banking sector has emerged stronger from these developments, has begun to re-inspire confidence in this. In all this, I've been anxious that our local banks are helped and given as much support as possible, which has been done. But I'll not be on the side of criminal behavior if that is discovered. I would urge that we are all patient for the investigations to be made in a calm manner. Again, while I'm on the subject of rogue activities in the banking sector, this is probably the time to mention the men's gold debacle. This is a tragic phenomenon that appears to have occurred in plain sight and affected a lot of people despite of warnings from official institutions. As the authorities try to unravel the intricacies of what happened, I admonish all Ghanaians to learn the necessary lessons for the future, even as state institutions work to bring a resolution to the matter, and those who are seen to indulge in criminal activities are brought to justice. Last week, I inaugurated the Presidential Financial Stability Advisory Council, an interinstitutional consultative coordination body which groups together all the regulators of our financial system and whose purpose is to advise the President on the measures to be taken to preserve the stability of the financial system. The existence of such a body would have forestalled the emergence of the men's gold saga and will make it difficult in future for any such scheme to get off the ground. Mr. Speaker, during times like these of banking and business upheavals, agriculture appears even more attractive. It is more predictable, and the soil and plants and animals far more reliable than sharp figures. The past 2 years have shown that when a government takes deliberate measures to support agriculture, it pays healthy dividends. There has been food, and for the first time in a long while, we had more than we needed. It was not that long ago that Ghana was in the humiliating position of having to import maize from her landlocked Sahelian neighbors and plantain from Côte d'Ivoire. Thanks to the program for planting for food and jobs, admirably organized by that outstanding Minister for Agriculture, Dr. Owusu Afriye Akoto. This House stands informed that in 2018, exports of food crops such as cassava, rice, yellow and white maize, soya, plantain, cowpea, and yam were made from Ghana to Burkina Faso, Togo, and Côte d'Ivoire in considerable quantities. We had a bumper harvest of produce, and last year we did not import a single grain of maize. Based on the successes chalked in 2017 and then in 2018, the ministry took giant strides to scale up the Planting for Food and Jobs campaign in 2019 and to introduce new models of the program. 4 of such new models are the Greenhouse Villages program, the Planting for Export and Rural Development PERD program, the Rearing for Food and Jobs RFJ campaign, and Mechanization Centers program. We are hoping that the success will lead to a fundamental change in attitudes towards farming practices, and the sector will be truly transformed. Bumper harvests and increased food production in general will be the norm and not a surprise once in a while. Extension services will be extended, and our farmers will have the confidence to know that theirs is a worthwhile business from which they can and will get healthy remuneration and respect. This year, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture Development plans to implement a flagship program, Aquaculture for Food and Jobs, AFP, complementary to the Planting for Food and Jobs initiative to reinvigorate and boost the aquaculture industry. Priority will be given to youth entrepreneurs distressed farmers, second cycle and public institutions to set up and operate fish farms across the country. This program will offer participating individuals and groups the requisite inputs such as cages, fingerlings, fish feed and training to be able to establish their own farms. The FJ will be implemented for 3 years from 2019 to 2021 in collaboration with the Nation Builders Corps and the school feeding program. It is expected to create some 7,000 jobs and an extra 33,628 metric tons of fish to our domestic fish production. Piloting of the AFG has already started at the James Camp Prison. For traditional fishing, government will collaborate with the private sector to facilitate the provision of 5,000 outward motors and 55,250 bales of prescribed fishing gears through the fisheries associations. To promote the effective and efficient distribution of premixed fuel, we will continue to use the premixed fuel tracking system and audit landing beaches measures which have ensured that since November there's been no report of premixed diversion, a marked improvement from the past. To modernize the fisheries sector, $185 million of loan money has been earmarked for the construction of 12 landing sites and 2 fishing harbors in selected fishing communities in the country. Phase 1 will kick off in March at Axim, Munford, Winneba, and Tessie. Recently, I cut the sword to commence work at the Jamestown Harbor Complex, which, like the development of Almina Fishing Harbor, is part of our plans for the fishing sector in 2019. Mr. Speaker, as is well known, our lands and water bodies have been under extreme pressure for some time. Farming lands have been destroyed, and rivers that used to provide safe drinking water and fish turned into toxic water bodies. This is why we placed the ban on all small-scale farming, so we could find ways to deal with illegal mining, or galamsey, as it is popularly called. The ban on small-scale mining has now been lifted, but not on galamsey. Some of our water bodies have shown remarkable signs of rejuvenation. River Ancobra, for example, looks restored to life. Indeed, some fish have even been seen in the Ancobra for the first time in a long while. But the battle against galamsey is nowhere near being won yet, and I appeal to all citizens to be part of the battle to keep our lands and water bodies safe. As I have said on several occasions, this government cannot be against mining. It bears repeating that with the Almighty having blessed our land with so many precious minerals, mining inevitably will be part of our lives. That is why I had the pleasure of reopening the Anglo Gold Obuasi mine on 22nd January 2019, which had remained effectively closed since 2014, in fulfillment of a campaign pledge I made to the people of Obuasi on 15th July 2016. Speaker, I'll continue to keep my promises to the Ghanaian people. Mr. Speaker, in order to help Anglo Gold Ashanti secure the needed investment for this project, government provided a number of fiscal incentives and guaranteed the stability of the project against changes in the legal environment, especially in the early years of the mine's operations. The fiscal arrangements made this time has provided a more equitable balance between the interests of government and the investors. With an estimated 2,500 jobs created, Obuasi is being brought back to life again, and this time round, under the new management of Anglo Gold Ashanti, the development of Obuasi will reflect the wealth its soil produces, like its other counterparts in other mining cities around the world. Mr. Speaker, we intend also to mine at long last our bauxite deposits in order to establish an integrated aluminum industry in Ghana. The Ghana Integrated Aluminum Development Corporation, a statutory corporation, has been set up with the support of Parliament to spearhead Ghana's commitment to create an integrated aluminum industry. Since its formation, the leadership of the corporation has been working tirelessly with transaction advisors and other stakeholders to ensure the objective of achieving an integrated aluminum industry is executed in a timely manner. A request for proposal is ready to be sent out to the market by the end of this month. This request will solicit proposals from investors interested in partnering government to develop various components of the integrated aluminum industry in Ghana. Taking cognizance of the fact that achieving an integrated aluminum industry agenda requires the uninterrupted and competitive supply of power to the industry, government is in the process of negotiating special arrangements to supply power at internationally competitive rates. This arrangement is expected to be approved by Cabinet and subsequently, hopefully by Parliament soon. The same model is being used for the exploitation of our iron ore deposits, which together with our considerable manganese deposits can enable us found a steel industry to serve our country and the region. A data center, the first of its kind, now exists at the Minerals Commission, which will allow prospective investors and partners to access every information regarding the bauxite deposits and the aluminum industry. The Minerals Commission is in the course of creating an equivalent data center for our iron ore deposits. Mr. Speaker, the security services are at the forefront of keeping us and our nation safe. Let me pay homage to the men and women of the services for the sterling work that they do. The Ghana Armed Forces, in collaboration with the police and other security agencies, have been in operations Calm Life, Cowleg, Halt, Conquered Fist, Congon, Citadel, Ahojo, and Vanguard. I echo to you, men and women of the armed forces. Ghana is proud of you. Your hard work is contributing to making our nation a safe place. I would like to mention the improvements that have been registered in dealing with nomadic herdsmen. The Ghana Armed Forces assisted the national security to embark on Operation Roadstar, and as a result, a 40-acre cattle ranch has been constructed to accommodate 6,000 cattle at Wawasi in Afran Plains, reducing considerably the tensions in the area with the nomadic herdsmen. There are plans to replicate these ranches in other parts of the country. Government is pleased to fulfill this promise to the military personnel by increasing the United Nations peacekeeping troops contribution allowances from $35 United States to $35 United States, from $30 to $35 United States per soldier per day. And as promised, we'll continue to pay the troops regularly at the operational areas. We'll continue to modernize and provide the equipment needed by the military to help them carry out their mandate effectively. Tomorrow, I'll be presenting to the Ghana Armed Forces 50 Ankai buses, the first tranche of the 138 staff and operational vehicles of various categories, and 26 dispatch motorbicycles. This year, we'll provide the Army with 30 Otoka armored personnel carriers and 6 fast patrol boats for the Navy. We'll also provide improved training facilities by transforming the military academy into a world-class institution and expand the housing project from 16 flats to 44 and begin constructing 160 two-bedroom apartments across the country. This year, we will also complete and commission the 500-bed military hospital in the Ashanti region and begin the third phase of this project. Mr. Speaker, the amendment of LI 1332, which is seeking to change the length of service of the men and women of the other ranks of the Ghana Armed Forces from 25 to 30 years, and the associated career progression plan has been reviewed, laid, and passed by Parliament and will be implemented this year as planned. Mr. Speaker, it is the police that we, the ordinary citizens, have to deal with in our everyday lives. It is therefore not surprising that often the police come in for a lot of criticism from the people. Speaker, as is the case with many of our institutions, things have deteriorated for a long time, and we have to accept the abnormal as normal. We've been busy this past year supplying the police with equipment, cars, motorbikes, drones, and other vital policing equipment. Financial clearance has been given, and they are in the process of recruiting up to 4,000 men and women into the service. That is the first. Gradually, we're increasing the police numbers, and the service, too, is waking up to its responsibilities and offering more training to their officers. I look forward to a better trained, better equipped, and happier police service that has the respect and cooperation of the people. Mr. Speaker, we need this well-trained police service if we're to abide by the rule of law. I'm aware of the frustration of many of the delays in the justice delivery system, which are the result of a multiplicity of factors which we are trying to address. And this must be the appropriate time and place to mention the abysmal state of the lower courts around our country. Many people must have seen on television the barely concealed outrage of the Chief Justice as she has been going around examining the courts. It is obvious that most of the lower courts are not fit for purpose, and we must provide suitable structures for our law courts. Discussions on how to raise the money are currently ongoing, and I'm optimistic that a solution will be found. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to know that there appears to have been a marked change in the Ministry of Justice. No longer do we have people bringing frivolous claims against the state because they know the case will not be defended and they will get judgment debts. I believe the word is now out that every claim against the government will be vigorously defended, and the state will no longer be the soft touch it used to be for people to get suspiciously large judgment debts awarded to them. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to state that, as you know, Parliament has virtually completed its deliberations on the Right to Information Bill, and that any moment from now, the nation will hear the news of its long-anticipated passage. I will happily assent to it as soon as it is brought to my table. Mr. Speaker, we all await the special prosecutor to start his work. It is in everybody's interest that we know that any accusations of corruption in public office will be vigorously investigated and prosecuted if the prima facie evidence is there. This should be an essential feature of the governance culture of our country. For myself, I know the special prosecutor to be a responsible public official who will act when he is ready. Mr. Speaker, Ghana remains an active player in international affairs, especially in the region of West Africa and on the continent of Africa. Ghana's voice is loud and clear on issues at international fora. Good neighborliness underpins our foreign policy, and we try to be at peace with all. I've been intimately involved in trying to find a resolution to the difficulties in our eastern neighbor country of Togo, and we hope that they are coming to an end. Mr. Speaker, communications inside and with the outside are critical for the modern existence of any nation. Our roads inside the country and those leading out to our neighboring countries have been in a dreadful state for a long time. Everybody has by now heard about the arrangements we have made with the Chinese company SONA, and it is a matter of great relief to me that I'm able to say that work will now be starting on the roads that have been designated to be part of that project. It is worth stating that we are very much aware that there are many more roads that do not come under the SONA deal, which are also in a bad way, and we continue to seek ways to build a road network worthy of our nation. I'm glad, Mr. Speaker, to be able to report that the Accra to Tema railway service has started running on the refurbished line. The opening of the Accra and Suwon line has been postponed because sand winners have undermined the ground underneath the track near Pokwasi. It is now being repaired, and the service will start hopefully by the end of February. If we want the railways to work, we would all have to take an interest in and stop the activities of encroachers on the railway lands. The rehabilitation of the narrow gauge line will continue from Nsawam to Koforidua. Work is continuing on the rehabilitation of the Kujokrum to Takwa section of the Western Line, while work on the standard gauge section from Kujokrum to Manso is ongoing. Apart from all the investments being made, the government is committing an extra $1 billion United States dollars to the development of the new railway network. $500 million will be applied to the development of the Western Line, and $500 million will be applied to the first of the Kumasi to Paga section of the national network. The development of the Tema-Ouagadougou railway line is also progressing steadily. 12 shortlisted companies have been invited to proceed to the next stage of the procurement process. This year, land acquisition will commence beyond the Volta River at Mpakanai, and the strategic investor will be selected. To sum it up, the railways are coming in a big way into Ghana, and we shall open up our country for the development that we all desire. Mr. Speaker, government recognizes the significance of aviation to our country's economic and social development. Operations at the Kumasi, Tamale, Takoradi airports have been revamped with the resurgence in domestic airline operations through the introduction of new domestic operators like Unity Air and Passion Air. Soon, the flag of Ghana will be flown again as we have identified strategic investors to launch a home-based carrier. Whilst we embark on the protracted process of building roads and railways to open up our country, we're doing so with modern technology. Mobile technology has almost covered the entire country, and broadband internet connectivity is available in many places. There are 1,200,000 registered and verified addresses through the National Digital Property Addressing System. In other words, we've joined the modern world, gradually leaving the right turn at the blue kiosk and opposite the Kofi Brookman cellar behind us. People are able to renew their national health insurance cards in minutes in the comfort of their own homes. You can now renew your driving license and register a car in half an hour. Register your business online and acquire a passport in a week without any of the difficulties that used to come with trying to get any of these things done. The national identification card, the Ghana card, has been issued to people in government departments and members of the security service. And this year, the rest of the population will be registered and receive their cards. We're determined to join the digital world. Mr. Speaker, Ghana won last year the bid to host the 13th All-Africa Games. It presents our nation with the opportunity to upgrade sporting infrastructure in the country and position our nation as a preferred destination for the development of sporting disciplines on the continent. We began renovating and upgrading our sporting infrastructure, such as the Accra and Cape Coast Sports Stadia and the Azuma Nelson Sports Complex in Keminni, and a complete refurbishment of sports facilities across the country. Funds have also been released for the completion of the University of Ghana Sports Stadium, started by the Kufuor-led MPP government, but abandoned soon after 2009. The Ghanaian people are also expectant of a return to normalcy of all football-related activities as soon as possible, and the Normalization Committee is working to ensure that they meet the March deadline. Mr. Speaker, 3 months ago, a member of this honorable House and the representative of Ayawaso West constituency, the West Wogan constituency, died suddenly, throwing all of us into mourning. On 31st January, 3 weeks ago exactly, a by-election was called to elect a replacement for the late Emmanuel Chiramatin Ejako. May his soul rest in perfect peace. During the course of that morning, some events took place in that constituency which led to an uproar in the country. My first instinct was to let the police do their investigations and then prosecute if they found evidence of criminality. The narration that this was another incident of, quote, normal by-election violence, unquote, caused me to expand my response. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, recent by-elections in Akwatia, Etiwa, Chereponi, Talensi, and Amenfi West have been marked with violence, and some people still have their physical and emotional scars to show for it. I could have sat it out, as some did for Akwatia, Etiwa, Chereponi, Talensi, and Amenfi West. But I decided that that will not be the interest of Ghanaian democracy. The time has come to put an end to the phenomenon of politically related violence. The only way in our system to begin to deal with such a situation is through the work of a commission of inquiry. Thankfully, I got 4 responsible Ghanaians of independent spirit who agreed to serve on the commission. I hope the findings and recommendations of the Emir Short Commission will enable us chart a path to ending politically related violence in our country. The events of last Monday in Kumasi, where a meeting of the national and regional executives of the opposition National Democratic Congress was broken up by acts of violence, leading to the tragic death of a citizen, have reinforced the urgent need for us to find that path. I want to use the platform of this message to make a sincere, passionate appeal to the leaders of the 2 main political parties in our country, MPP and NDC, to come together as soon as possible, preferably next week, to agree on appropriate measures to bring an end to this worrying and unacceptable phenomenon of vigilantism in our body politic. Mr. Speaker, I have asked the leadership of the MPP to extend an invitation to the leadership of the NDC for such a meeting. The security services of the country will be on standby to assist this meeting. If voluntary disbandment by the parties is not feasible, then I will initiate legislation in the matter. Vigorous debate, and the exchange of ideas should be the true basis of political dialogue and competition in our country, not the activities of party vigilante groups. Mr. Speaker, what was tolerated over the years cannot and must not be accepted anymore. We must not take our peace and security for granted, not for a moment. Our children and grandchildren will not forgive us if we were to compromise our peace and stability. I will not permit that to happen under my watch. Our forebears paid too high a price with their blood and toil to bequeath to us this beautiful nation. And the lives of our citizens are too precious to waste. So, Mr. Speaker, let us come together, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, and let us all be guided by the inspirational words of the second stanza of our national anthem. Hail to thy name, O Ghana. To thee we make our solemn bow. Stand first, steadfast to build together a nation strong in unity. With our gifts of mind and strength of arm, whether night or day, in the midst of storm, in every need, whatever the call may be, to serve thee, Ghana, now and forevermore. Mr. Speaker, we have our challenges, but our nation is in good health. I thank you for your attention. May God bless our nation.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Bless you. Over. Members, order. Honorable members, in accordance with our standing order 58, I wish to convey to His Excellency, the President of the Republic, the gratitude of this honorable House. I seize this opportunity to express our appreciation to the Ghana Armed Forces, the various security agencies, and our own internal security for their services which have ensured the smooth success of this function. Honorable members, again, and in accordance with our practice, a formal communication will be extended to His Excellency the President after this House has dutifully debated the address duly presented. I thank you very much for your cooperation and the extraordinary cool and collection. Duly assured me, and which has been duly implemented. I thank you. Honorable Majority Leader, any indications at this stage?
Speaker, the President has come to this House this morning in fulfillment of Article 67, which obligates him at the beginning of each session of Parliament and before a dissolution of Parliament to address Parliament on message the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, we have all seen the poise in the delivery, which is admirable and commendable. The content, which we have all heard, we shall subject to scrutiny beginning next week, Tuesday. In that regard, and having exhausted the business of this day, Speaker, I would want to move that the House takes adjournment until tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the forenoon. In the meantime, we shall see the President off from the chamber in the good company of my colleague, whom I saw nodding in profuse appreciation of the President. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I shall move.
Honorable Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the Republic and Commander-in-Chief have dutifully performed his duties as required of him in the Constitution. In this chamber, Mr. Speaker, as you yourself have observed, extraordinary conduct, the honor, the dignity of the President, let today mark the beginning of a rule of thumb that at all times, including when he will soon be succeeded, the same respect will be accorded. Mr. Speaker, with those affordable houses uncompleted in whole, and with the elevation. With the elevation of the suffering of Ghanaians to misery or prosperity, Mr. Speaker, you are reminded that the safety and security of Ghanaians remain paramount. With that assurance, we will look up to you dealing decisively, ruthlessly, and timely, without any flower given to any partisan actor. I beg to second the motion.
Honorable members, the motion for adjournment has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. And this honorable house will stand adjourned to tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the forenoon. Thank you very much.
Well, President Akufo-Addo has just delivered the State of the Nation Address 2019, following which both sides of the House in Parliament have agreed that debate on the subject will be postponed to next Tuesday, for which reason they have arisen for today. The President is leaving the House, but not without exchanging greetings with some of his appointees and some of his opponents, so to speak. We've seen him exchange pleasantries with his wife, the First Lady. In fact, they exchange a kiss. They're very beautiful. We also seen him exchange pleasantries with his appointees, the Attorney General, the Finance Minister, the Majority Leader and Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. We've also seen him with Trades Minister Alan Tremontain and many others. He's also been to the minority side, exchange pleasantries with Fifi Kwete. We've also seen him exchange with Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu. And now he's been walked out of the House. In a moment, we'll bring you many more reactions from the floor. Right now, he's reached the seat of former President Jerry John Rawlings and First Lady Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings. He's exchanged pleasantries there. He's moved on to greet some of the chiefs who attended the SONA 2019 in Parliament. And now he's taking a bow from the House. We'll get you some reactions on the floor, but obviously the President ended his address with vigilantism, as if to etch it in our memory and tell us never to forget it. And he's very simple with it: voluntary disbandment, or he will institute legislation to deal with it. He tells us that it's very paramount to him to institute this, because posterity will judge us for whatever we do now to destabilize the country. Let us know if your expectations have been met. But before then, let's take a listen to some of the things that we looked forward to with my colleague Kweku Timing. Kweku, the President was large on the economy. One of the areas he spent ample time on. He's told us some of the things we already know, like inflation figures, like the interest that we already know has the base rates, Kweku, that has been reduced drastically. We also know, again, inflation has gone down to single figure. We know of many other small things that have happened with the fundamentals. We'll look at how it has told on our pockets in the future. But how is it different from the past?
All right. So, Keminni, like you rightly said, I'm quickly going in to give you some database on some few things that we captured in year 2017 and then really compare it that between year 2018, 2019, as he described the state of the nation, if we've seen some significant improvement. Now, Keminni, if I'll just capture some pointers that I made a short while ago, looking at year 2018, because obviously we don't have any data for 2019. It would be compiled just when he's reading his 2020 State of the Nation address. So provisional data for the first 3 quarters indicated, that's for year 2019, a strong GDP growth rate of 6%. Now, if I'm looking at GDP, and you should go a little further and talk about the GDP growth rate of the economy, you would realize that in and around the time 2016 and like when he first came to power, it was somewhere hovering around 3.6, but it's seen significant growth. So there you have it, the economic growth 2016, including oil estimated target was just 3.6, but today we are here talking about an economic growth estimate of 6%, higher than the annual target of 5.6%. That's the real GDP growth for year 2019, has also been forecasted at 7.6%. So obviously it tells you or gives you a picture of some significant growth in the economy. Now, Keminni, I know maybe Duncan Amanor will take advantage and talk about an oil discovery that he mentioned, but did not give all the details, but mentioned that, look, this oil discovery is the second most significant on the African continent. Now, if this is going to be piped into the country, as in we're going to see some level of revenue generation, then obviously, Keminni, it tells you that we are going to see some significant boost of the economy in terms of revenue generation. Now, quickly look at some highlights in the past where you were looking at some of the banking sector performance in and around that time, the aggregate performance. So non-performing loans at the time stood at 11.2%. This in 2015 May. They are trying to halve it at this time. I believe it's at single digits. That's after the reforms of the economy. They are trying to drastically reduce this. You realize that these were the times that the banking reforms were going on, so there were significant difficulties. They're saying that, look, we've consolidated the bank, we've done enough of the cleanup, so we are expecting that payments of loans can see a significant boost. So these are the comparisons. If it's just about the figures, Keminni, then you can say on authority that on the books it's looking good. But as to you asking in your pocket, well, I'll leave it for your panelists to judge.
As we'd leave that conversation for another day. I'm not sure we'll ever be able to exhaust that. But because you're on the banking sector, let me just bring into a perspective what the president has been speaking about on the sector. He's admitted that, look, some jobs were lost, and we did our best to minimize. He didn't give figures, but in the future, we would hope that people who work within this sector will let us know, our economy managers, that is, will let us know how many jobs were lost and how they managed to minimize that. But also on the banking sector, he lets us know that the cleanup, which has cost the measures of banks, the closure of some, cost us some 12.7 billion cedis. That's a lot of money, Kweku.
Absolutely, Keminni. Money that hitherto could have been used for other significant purposes like infrastructural development and the like. Don't you forget that this time we're looking at GATT also coming in. That's the Ghana Amalgamated Trust, and to reform the banks further. So we can't even say we are totally out of the doldrums yet, as in the reforms and the like. All this time they also need some money to empower the banking system in the country. And here they are looking at issuing even a bond of 2 billion Ghana cedis. So our wars are not over yet. So you juxtapose this with developments in the economy where you're looking at raising money for some fiscal developments, and then you're raising money also to repair some difficulties in the financial sector, Keminni.
And also, he was talking about men's gold. Nothing concrete on men's gold, but at least it would give some hope that the president has men's gold at the back of his mind. He hopes that, authorities would work hard to bring a closure to the men's gold issue. He also tells us that, look, we're putting in place legislation to forestall issues like men's gold even starting up in the first place. Did it work for you, Kweku?
Obviously, well, you can see the roadmap already with the Securities and Exchange Commission just moving in now and being more responsive with the educational line that they've told now, and then also the reforms that they've told with non-bank financial institutions and investment fund managers around this time are not expected to be able to promise any amount, so to say, interest. So, Keminni, if you're looking out for an interest, so to say, 25% and the like, fund managers are not allowed, and these are some of the measures that have swiftly been implemented. And it tells you that at the end of the day, if you are looking at the treasury bill rate plus or minus, not so much, and then fund managers are asked that don't assure of any rate, take the money, work with it. If you should make some promises, well, we'll be here as big brothers to check the amount you made, but you make sure you pay the consumer. All these reforms have come up to ensure that enough is done to curtail any issues of fraudsters getting into the environment and sweeping people off their investments.
Now, Kweku, just before you move on to our Greek, this is a very interesting subject, the banking sector and the men's gold saga and the president's response to it as far as the SONA 2019 is concerned. So let me engage my guests briefly on that, and then we can move on to the other areas and then to Parliament, where we'll hear from the MPs. If you just joined us, this is our complete coverage of SONA 2019. In the studio with me, Duncan Amoir, his Executive Secretary for COPEC, and John Frinjua, who is a research officer with the CDD. Duncan, let me start with you. The President's statement or comments on the banking sector commence good.
In fact, Keminni, one of the things that, as he presented the State of Nation, I kept asking is, how long are we going to throw money down the drain in this country? If you have 12.7 billion, that is almost 2.45 billion US dollars gone. We are not seeing any arrests, no prosecutions, no refunds. I don't think that these monies are vanished into thin air. If people's negligence or people's greed brought this onto us, the taxpayer should not be made to compensate or pay for these things. So beyond just telling us the figures, how much we've all suffered collaterally as far as this banking crisis is concerned, I am hoping that we would see some action to at least recoup or recover some of these funds back into the nation's chest. I would not be happy to hear another day that something Keminni had no idea about, I didn't know about, the market women who are listening and watching had no idea about, would all be burdened with this another time when we'll probably go onto the open market for a bond.
But to be fair to the President, he hopes that the advisory council that he set up will deal with some of these things, nip it in the bud before, you know, it blooms. You
see, Keminni, you are talking of significant, you know, amounts here. 12.7 billion Ghana cedis. I'm sure if you put that, I mean, even into youth employment, you know, programs, the amount of jobs you may be able to generate across the 10 regions or 16 regions will be phenomenal. Unfortunately, you hear names being bandied about. Then there's the men's gold saga. People's monies are locked up. They do not know their fate. The guy spent all the money before the Dubai officials arrested him. Is there any of the funds available that people can at least get 30% of whatever they you know, we expected to hear a little more, you know,
than what he told us.
He's only scratched the surfaces on some of the issues without delving any deeper than some of us expected.
John, were you disappointed the amount of time the President spent on it, as though, you know, just brushing over the subject?
I think so. I think this is an issue that kind of engulfed the whole country for several weeks. And for the President to just reduce it to just a few sentences, I think it wasn't enough. I think he should have been very clear, very concrete with some of the steps that he's taken to curb this, to make sure that we don't have a repeat of this. On the men's gold saga, I think for me this is the first time I'm hearing the President even comment on it. And to just make a statement that the advisory council is supposed to kind of work to see that things do not repeat in the future. I think there should have been more concrete measures to deal with it. That's my my friend Duncan said here.
Indeed. Now, I think Kweku is not ready to take us through a few other slides, but let me just tell you also that we'll go to Parliament in a bit and hear reactions from those who listen from the floor of the House. But while we wait on our reporters on the ground to get in touch with us, let's talk about vigilantism. One of the areas the President spent ample time on, obviously, to tell us that it is really important to him and dear to his heart, and it's something he says in his speech. Vigilantism, your take on that?
I think that was the proudest moment for me. I think the President didn't mince words at all. He was very clear, and he talked about how he plans to make sure that our country is safe, and I really appreciate the way he approached it, talking about a bipartisan approach. Of course, if you live in this country, you know the political parties that these vigilante groups
and how they have fielded.
And how they have fielded, exactly. So having the NDC and then the MPP coming together to find a common solution, I think that is a really great strategy. I hope that they are able to do that. I hope that they are able to do that. Because if they're able to do that, I think they would.
I'll come back to the vigilantism issue in the studio. How this would work, the feasibility of this in the first place, because the President is expecting that this meeting is held next week. I'll come back, but let's go to Parliament. Dela Michelle is there, and Dela.
Keminni.
Well, what can you report at this point?
Well, as we all know, the President just finished addressing the nation concerning some key issues that we've all been expecting him to speak about. Probably he's touched on education, he's touched on health, he's touched on security as well. But I have two MPs here from the NDC and then the NPP, of course. Former Power Minister is here with us, Kwabena Donkor. He's just going to tell us, really, has your expectations been met when it comes to the address that the President just gave?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My expectations were not met. And there is also a fundamental issue that I think Parliament will have to decide on. What exactly constitutes the state of the nation? What is expected in the State of Nation address? Is it a report on the status quo, where we are? Or is it another litany of promises? That is fundamental. Parliament may have to decide to guide all future presidents so that we know exactly what is expected of a state of nation. Having said that, my two biggest concerns that I expected my president to address were security and the economy. Unfortunately, whilst I would applaud him for saying the leaders of political parties must collectively decide on the vigilante groups, I think he opted out. He opted out because it is his responsibility as the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces to stamp out every illegality. Vigilante groups are illegal. Vigilante groups are illegal groupings. And therefore, he should be decisive.
But he just called on both parties to come together and fight this.
Both parties are not in government. There is one person the people of Ghana have elected, and his number one responsibility is to protect the security and stability of the nation. All vigilante groups are illegal creations. So he does not need anybody's participation to stamp out an illegality. He should take the bull by the horn. It is illegal, and his party, particularly when his party started with the visible Delta forces, he should stamp that out, and everybody else will fall in line.
MP, I see you disagreeing to that.
Yes, what do you have yes, fundamentally, yes. I mean, I'm surprised my colleague is saying this. Because the response of the president, I would say, smacks of a leader who has good qualities. Good quality leadership. That's why he's portrayed over there. Because whether you like it or not, this phenomenon of vigilantism has been with us for, I don't even remember, from Kwame Nkrumah time. Remember the Veranda boys and girls, they were all vigilante groups. And if in the Fourth Republic, we've gone through serious confrontations, especially during by-elections, all through political vigilantism. And as he's saying, like, he may have Kwabra Donko boys, it starts from there. I may have Yafrempo boys, then the thing starts from there. And it's all a question of unemployment, joblessness, are they even employable and all those things. So fundamentally, these two parties, we are all guilty of it. We are corporate, so we should accept it. But this man says, I'm not going to Talensi, I'm not going to Tripoli, I'm not going to Akwatia, I'm not going to the other place, Atiwa. I'm taking full responsibility for from what happened only yesterday at Ayawasu. So from there, I know that it comes from these two parties. Let us meet, dialogue, come out with ideas. We will use the security apparatus to also support us. Then we will come to a conclusion that we don't need this. Because unilaterally, the president alone cannot. You see, somebody, the IGP said we are going to disband these people. And then his party general secretary said, no way. They are now going to even arm more of those people to protect themselves. If the president should stand up and say, I'm going to use my legal means to crush everybody, the same people will show it to the international community that the president is a violent president. He says we should dialogue to come to a conclusion. And if you are standing here saying that no, that is not the remedy to it, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, because of time, I'm just going to give both of you 5 seconds to wrap up with your final words. I mean, so aside the fact that he's mentioned vigilantism, which of course you're not pleased that he's placed the call to both parties, what else in the State of the Nation's address did not meet your satisfaction? I was so disappointed when my president stated that 3 MOUs had been signed with auto manufacturing companies to come to Ghana. Meanwhile, MOUs are even legally non-binding. When you have nothing to say, you look for things that are not really important. MOUs are non-binding, and that is why I think we should define what comes into the State of Nation address, so that we commit future leaders, not just this leader. We commit all our future leaders to exactly what we expect in the State of the Nation address, not another litany of promises. Not another litany of promises. The final words of former Power Minister Kwabena Donko. Your final words, sir? Yes, you see, State of the Nation address everywhere. It's a routine program that every president has to go through, and this is no different. It has been like that since 1993. So my brother saying that we should redefine the State of the Nation address, I disagree with him, because everything falls in place. You may go back to the budget. Most of the time, the State of the Nation address comes after the budget has been read, and you need to take the salient points in it, sector by sector. You state what has been the situation, and then looking forward, what is there for you. And exactly this is what the president did in terms of every sector, from agric to aviation to railways, and every sector he hit there. I mean, it's only the uninitiated who say something otherwise. It's only the uninitiated who say something otherwise. So these are the views of the two members of parliament for NDC and MPP after the president just finished addressing the nation. Keminni, over to you.
Well, thank you. The lab Michelle there with some MPs, or two MPs from both sides of the divide. Not that we expected them to agree on the matter, but it brings to question a concern I raised earlier about the president's approach to the disbandment of these vigilante groups. Will these meetings take place at all? Will it work? And John, I was with you at the time. What the visibilities, would it work? In my opinion, what we saw is just an example of what next week could look like.
Yes, but I think it's the president started on a good note, and the president also gave options. So let's be fair with the president and say that, okay, he said you can have a bipartisan solution, and if that doesn't work, I'll apply the laws. I will enact legislation to make sure that we put an end to vigilantism. You cannot deal with vigilantism in this country by decree. without working with the political parties. Of course, we know that these political parties, these vigilante groups, owe allegiance to these political parties. We have party executives coming out and saying that they're not going to disband them. We have party executives saying that they are going to support them. So I think that to have a common roadmap to be able to put an end to this, we should involve these political parties that are important in the process. So I think it might be difficult to tell now if it is feasible, but I think that since the president kind of,
even so, John, these groups commit crimes.
Yes.
Crimes that they should be held accountable for.
Yes.
Why do we even need a new law to deal with it? We have enough laws, don't we?
We have enough laws. I think that nothing stops the security from pursuing some of these cases. I also think that there might be some loopholes which I am not a legal person to be able to mention. But if there are some legal loopholes that might constrain the ability of the security services to go after these vigilante groups, I think that then we need a very new legislation on that. That I cannot comment strongly because I don't have that legal advice.
Perhaps our biggest problem with this, which we have been saying since vigilantism took this very sour turn, is the political will to deal with it.
Yes.
This is not the first time we've heard the president stern on dealing with these hooligans or hoodlums. But at the end of the day, we go back to them. They go back to these people who work for them. They are supposed to deal with party security, but whatever they do extends to what we see today. And so our problem may not be because we don't have the law to deal with them, or because these parties cannot sit and talk about it, but the parties themselves.
And that is why it is important to go back to the president's statement that the two parties should work hand in hand to put an end to this particular issue. If the president says today that, okay, I'm going to put an end to vigilantism, and nothing happens, we've heard that before. But now,
too many times.
But now this is a different information. He says that the two parties should try to deal with the issue. If not, I am moving to another level of legislation.
Benefit of doubt.
Exactly. But I think that it moves beyond just that. I think that the security should be more resourced. I also think that...
well, in terms of resourcing the police,
yes.
The president is given a litany of things that they have done for the police people, including giving them drones. We'll look into that. And Duncan, I'll take your perspective on this new approach to dealing with vigilantism in a bit. Let's go to Parliament. Ibrahim Al-Hassan is there with a couple of MPs to deal with, to get their perspective on the President's SONA 2019. Ibrahim.
Hello, Keminni.
Tell us who you're engaging now.
Well, I have with me a member of the communications team of the government and the MPP, and that's Eric Toom. First of all, let me pick his thoughts about what he heard from the president and what his take-home will be. You're welcome. You're live on G81 TV special coverage of this edition's State of the Nation address, the third one for the president. You heard the president. What stood out for you?
Thank you. I think this is probably one of the most profound State of the Nation addresses that I have ever
We apologize for the break in transmission. This is GH1 Television. My name is Keminni Amanor, and this is our complete coverage of SONA 2019. The President has finished delivering his address in the House of Parliament. The House has been adjourned. Next Tuesday or next week, we would see a debate on this matter. But my colleague Ibrahim Al-Hassan is engaging North-Tong MP, Kujeto Ablakwa. Let's take a listen to that.
Remember what he said, that no matter the other indicators, what really matters is the exchange rate. And that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you.
But he says the fundamentals are strong in the president's presentation.
Yeah, so is that logical to you? When you were in opposition, you said that what matters most for us to have assurance that indeed the fundamentals are strong, then your exchange rate must be good. Your exchange rate must do well. The level of depreciation, and indeed depreciation should not be a factor. That is what exposes you. So what has changed? Why is the principle no longer being espoused? And why the silence? I found that really, curious. I was in my worst of imaginations expecting that, at least some justification, as my brother and his colleagues have been doing in the media, talking about the rate of depreciation and trying to, skirt around it.
Inflation is 9%, he mentioned, 6-year low.
Yeah, so you see, I would not take this line if you had not set this standard. You said, when inflation, remember, the best record so far as inflation is concerned happened under the NDC government, where for more than 2 years we had single-digit, the longest sustained single-digit inflation happened under the NDC. The highest GDP growth happened under the NDC. And we were touting all of these things. Remember the 14% GDP growth, which was the highest in the world. We were told by our friends on the other side that, hey, you guys hold it. What matters most is the exchange rate. If your fundamentals are that strong, it must reflect in the exchange rate. So what has happened that so far we are not hearing anything about the exchange rate? I found that most disappointing.
Now let's talk about the activity of the vigilante group, of political party affiliated vigilante group. The president has extended an invitation to your party. Come to the table. Let's find a lasting solution to this. In order?
The invitation is in order. I must say that apart from the president distancing himself a bit and not presenting it as it should have been presented, I would have liked him to say that, look, I have known these vigilante groups or militias since I was opposition leader. We all recall what happened at the MPP headquarters and other places. But look, we are all going to take responsibility and we are all going to find a solution. I would have liked that approach instead of him removing himself and saying he has spoken to the MPP leadership, they should call their counterparts in the NDC, as if he's not really part of it. When we all know that the facts on the ground really point to the fact that, look, as opposition leaders, and probably beyond him, not only him, they bear some responsibility. I would have liked that approach. But be that as it may, I'm glad that an invitation has been extended. Recall that some of us have been saying from day one that let's disband these groups. That's what we need to do. Let's disband these groups. And I like the bit about if talks delay, he will initiate legislation. But you see, I believe that even beyond the talks, even if the talks are successful, let us still pass legislation to outlaw it. And honestly, I've been thinking about a private member's bill, working with colleagues across the aisle so that we can have a piece of legislation that will outlaw it, whether the talks are successful or not. Because what if the current leadership on both sides agree, but then their successors, or along the line, if there's nothing binding, if there's nothing, legally blocking the formation and re-emergence of these militias, we cannot really be sure that the future is secure. So I would still want the legislation to come into force.
Are you still going to put the private members bill?
Yes, it's something I've considered strongly. I've spoken to one or two colleagues across the aisle, and I think that we should come together and have this piece of legislation. It will really help our country.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member of Parliament for North-Tong. Earlier you heard me engage Eric Tum, a member of the communications team of the governing NPP. So Keminni, As you can see behind me, the foyer is very packed. The president has just finished delivering his third State of the Nation's address. A lot of points to take home, a lot of things to chew on, and we'll be here bringing viewers up to speed regarding reactions to the president's third SONA. Keminni.
Brian, we're going to come back to you in a bit, just when you have another conversation to share with us. Right now, however,
yes, I have the Interior Minister here with me.
Absolutely, he should react to vigilantism.
What the president said, a lot will rest on him and his ministry.
Absolutely.
And now, I asked him a couple of days ago as whether we're going to hear something definite from the president regarding not just the security situation, but activities of political party-affiliated vigilante groups. Honorable Counsel, you heard the president, and I'm sure even before the president spoke, you should have knowledge as to what exactly he's going to say. What will be your initial reactions to what the president said regarding political party vigilante groups?
Thank you very much. I totally agree. You recall the last time we spoke, I made it clear to you that is the president's policy to fight vigilantism. And I also said that since the incident in Kumasi, it was an appropriate time for all of us to bond together, to come together and deal with it. Mr. President has given further detail of that, where he says that he has directed that the MPP should get in touch with the NDC so that they can throw their weight about this. But it's not that he's abdicating his role. No, he has added the caveat that should we fail to give the appropriate support, he will nevertheless go ahead and do what he's got to do to make sure that Ghana is secure. And I told you another thing the last time, that the president is prepared to put his head on the line to do the right things for this country. And today you heard it, when he said he's more interested in the next generation than the next election. So that's why he's able to take on illegal mining, Galamsey, that's a strong group, able to take on land guards, another strong group, and he's taking on vigilantism. He is putting an end to violence during by-elections. And let me give you a few examples. I was deputy minority leader when Chiripone by-election came on. We went there. There was shooting. A girl was shot in the head, sent in for surgery. No action. No trial by anybody. No action by the leader at the time. Then I lost the election, went back to my private practice and went to Tellency. Tellency, there was violence, there was shooting again, injuries. And the Minister for the Interior at that time, his comment was, violence begets violence. You were in this country and you heard it. Contrast that with this situation at Ayawaso, with Mr. President, as president. You saw what his reaction is. His reaction is to show his abhorrence, not just for the event, but to take steps that will bring an end to that trend and that culture of violence. And that is what he is doing. And I'm confident and proud to work for such a president. My work is to make sure that I implement whatever he says. I'm going to go on it. And I encourage you, the media, to help us to do just that. And I think you'll help us.
Yeah, you talk about the fact that the president gave a caveat that if these negotiations or dialogues fail, he will initiate processes towards getting the legislation. Why can't we have both?
No, he hasn't said that if they fail. He said, help me, but otherwise I'm going on. And where necessary, bring legislation. That's what he said. He didn't say I'm holding on and waiting for you. But it's all good. As I've always told you that security is a collective responsibility. That's why he emphasizes by that invitation. That when they come together, they make good that collective responsibility. And that's what he wants. But with or without that, Mr. President will do his work. And I will be privileged and proud to work with him.
Finally, let's talk about retooling the personnel of the security service, specifically the police. He made mention of some gadgets that have been procured to be given to the police. Is that right now?
Yes, it's ongoing. Last year he voted 800 million extra outside the budget. And then we got 160 vehicles in December 2017. Then we got 200 cars in the middle. And as I talk to you now, we are expecting more equipment on the high seas. As it goes on, you'll be called to come and welcome them. And there are other equipment that are coming that we won't let you see because they are intelligence equipment. But believe you me, this president is working and doing a lot to equip and support the security services. Thank you.
Finally, the helicopters. We talk about the helicopters. Procurement. How far with the procurement?
Oh, no. Now, of course, they would come at the right time. Various basic things are being done. They would come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that is Interior Minister Ambrose Derry speaking to us live from the foyer of Parliament. And that is all in reaction to the President's third State of the Nation's address. He talked about a number of things. He talked about the economy. Of course, the minorities of the opinion that he didn't touch on the depreciation of the local currency. He talked about, of course, the activities of vigilante groups. And that is some aspect of the general security matters he talked about. He talked about retooling the police service, talk about retooling the personnel of the armed forces, and what have you. So back to you, Keminni, in the studios.
Ibrahim, thank you very much. We'll come back to you when you have more interviews for us. This is our live coverage of SONA 2019. It is clear that on the president's approach to tackling vigilantism, the sides are divided over how the president went about it. Clearly, some agree that the invitation is a good step. However, the president distancing himself from the process or the effects of vigilantism is one they cannot admire. But here's what Dr. Edward Omane-Boamah, former communications minister in the Mahama administration, wrote on his Facebook page. And I'll skip the first part. In the second part, he says, instead of addressing the issue frontally, he's passing the back. Even Pontius Pilate will envy him. And that's in connection with the president distancing himself, according to the minority, on the issue of vigilantism. Is something also that the Noctong MP, Samuel Kujeto-Ablakwa, alluded to when he spoke with my colleague Ibrahim Al-Hassan. It brings me back to the studio. Duncan, your take on the subject of vigilantism?
Keminni, we've gone past the stage of dialogue, if you ask me. Ghanaians who are getting terrified by the day by these hoodlums carrying ammunitions, shooting, and all of them are terrified. They would want to see action as to what is being done to stamp this out. As to whether the political parties can sit in a room and say, oh, I'm disbanding mine, disband yours. And that would ever make sense to any of them, especially when they don't even trust themselves. I have said that at the heart of this vigilantism has to do with trust in state institutions. The ruling parties often don't believe the police can protect them. So they have their party boys following, appointees and, key party persons. The opposition also believes that, indeed, if police cannot even protect those in power, we should also arm ourselves. And we are getting to a point where it's getting very nasty. Today, these guys, most of whom may not have proper military training, are getting military weapons. And you wonder what these weapons will be used for when they are done protecting these politicians. And so we are saying that we will be very happy if the president will move to the next phase. He should not even wait for NPP, NDC to go and sit in the room, because they would never come to any compromise. You cannot sit and off the top of your head believe that a time will come when NPP will say, I'm done with my vigilante boys, I have sacked all of them, sack yours, and then let us make peace. It won't happen. So we need to move to the next phase where the president, as the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, would now put his foot down and say, look, if you're a member of my party, you engage in that, I will let the laws deal with you. If you are in opposition and you think...
He said it before.
Keminni,
he said it before. Let's deal with the aspect of legislation. We have come to know now that hitherto we understood it as if the talks don't work, would legislate. Now, Interior Minister is saying the work hand in hand. While talks are going on, processes will also begin for legislation. What kind of law do we need now? If the issue is that we need to create a fresh law or fresh laws to deal with vigilantism, what kind of a law do we need?
I do not subscribe to federal legislation. If a thief entered somebody's room this morning, he will be treated as a thief. If an armed robber was caught on a highway, he will be treated so, and justice dispensed immediately. Yet the political hoodlums would find stronger backing. Initially, they would now be chased by the police. Now some of them have become even more powerful than the police. You don't need legislation, you need action. And that is where I think if we cannot let the police council stand independent of any government interference, we would weaken the internal, security systems within the country such that a time might come, a police officer's uniform is nothing. And so if the president would agree, maybe legislation to say that police council from this government, 100 years to come government, nobody appoints the IGP. The IGP now becomes a creation of the police council. The government of the day may have the interior minister on the police council, the defense minister, chief of defense staff, and all on the police council. But the police top hierarchy, those commissioners, should also form an integral part, and through that process, be able to nominate either the senior most or the most qualified as an IGP. Once that is done, any IGP can stand up to even the president of the day. When the president does something wrong, we should have a police force that is able to move in on the president and say, Mr. President, you've gone against the constitution of the land. Unfortunately, Keminni, the sort of legislation or constitution we practice today, I do not think that if nothing drastic is done, vigilantism will come to an end on its own because political parties have met and agreed that they want to disband them. They can't disband them. If you listen to actors on the NDC side, right? They will tell you they need these guys to protect them. NPP will tell you that they have had these guys even whilst in opposition. They can't disband them. We need action.
I want us to deal briefly with corruption, and then we'll talk about the retooling of the police service. Your take on corruption, John? Civil society is impressed?
No. So we all know that this president came to power on a campaign of anti-corruption.
Right.
We are all in this country. What has happened since?
We've appointed a special prosecutor.
What has happened after the appointment?
More legislation.
More legislation. Nothing much has been done. We haven't gone for the monies. We haven't gone to apprehend. We haven't even arrested anybody. So I was expecting that if the president was trying to set up the processes and all that over the past few years, at least we should have gotten to the point where we would have started prosecutions.
We've had a few cases in the past. Investigations have been launched into it and nothing happened. And today, the president reiterated that, look, if you're able to establish a prima facie case against any government appointee, we will prosecute. So perhaps we have failed in doing that. However, we also know that a few cases are in court. We know that the former Cocoa Board boss is in court. We know that he, together with 3 others or so, are in court. A few others I readily do not have on top of my mind. So you would want to think that something is happening.
I don't think that that is enough. Something might be happening, yes. Of course, there are officials that have been called to the courts. But we haven't seen anything substantial coming out of it. And I don't also think that it's the president's responsibility to tell us or to clear his appointees. It is the responsibility of the courts. I don't think that it should be our responsibility to come with evidence. I think it should be the responsibility of the state institutions to go after some of these individuals, investigate the matters to the very conclusion. That we haven't seen anything yet. When it comes to waste, which is part of that big corruption issues, we also know about the president coming up with councils, coming up with advisory councils. And of course, we know that all these councils are advisory. They are not independent. So if they're not independent and they are under the president, what would be their potency? They will not be independent enough. I think that their independence would be compromised. So with the recent creation of the fiscal councils, and the fiscal council actually comes directly under the president. It is not independent. Per international standards, I think that this is not in accord at all.
But the president touts its ability to give us some discipline in dealing with our economic issues.
I don't think they can. I think that they could be compromised at some point.
At some point.
Yes.
At some point.
So the best should have been that coming under Parliament and the Public Services Commission.
Duncan, your take on
but
corruption?
not exactly under the presidency.
Keminni, people engage in acts of corruption, several millions.
Allegedly.
Alleged. They engage in them, actually.
Allegedly. We haven't been able to get to the bottom of any of it yet. We have Maslock, we have, Cocoa Board and the likes. We haven't got to the bottom of any. So allegedly.
Keminni, I would...
Even Boss was alleged.
I would maintain they get into. Because Ghana loses so much through corruption yearly, since the Rollins era and Nkrumah era. But when it gets to the politicians dealing with corruption, I don't know if it is scratch my back, let me scratch your back. But clearly, the sort of corruption cases that we had leveled against the former government, I am surprised that till date, nobody is being prosecuted forcefully enough, right? The sort of corruption cases you would also record under the current government and future governments. You'll be surprised to know that after 10 years, people have gone home, whatever monies that are in question, we juggle it, we go to the law courts. There must be something fundamentally wrong with our constitution. Because, Keminni, it cannot be the case that somebody goes to steal 10 cedis in an office, right?
That's a crime.
Swiftly, the police is able to apprehend.
And that's a crime.
That's a crime.
But if you cause financial loss to the state, it's a
misdemeanor. Then they juggle it. And I think that our president now has a golden opportunity to ensure that corruption in whichever shape or form is dealt with decisively. If he does this for Ghanaians, some of us would for the rest of our lives, remember that legacy more than even, building roads for me. Because if you are able to stamp corruption out and annually the country is able to protect $3 billion, we don't need the Chinese. We would not need any foreign donor coming in with $50 million, $100 million, somebody supporting us with $40 million, and we applaud. If we can be able to save $3 billion from going down the drain, we at COPEC still believe that one of the fights that the MPA is working hard on, but which needs further action, is the fuel smuggling situation.
The fuel smuggling.
People are making money, lining their pockets.
I want us to score the state of the nation sector by sector as we go. So perhaps we'll score corruption, the state of the nation as far.
From the president's, address today, it tells us that he is just towing the same line.
They are not serious.
They are not serious. To be frank, to be clear with what I'm trying to say, the president is not serious about this. He just personally mentioned it, and he talked about assenting to that. But he hasn't really given us any concrete decision as to how to go about it and whether he's going to pass it. So I don't think the vigor with which he talked about it before he became president, he still continues that. No, that is absolutely.
It would seem he's dialed back.
Yes.
He's dialed back on what he said he was going to do with regards to the RTI. So RTI corruption, what would be your score as civil society?
I think on a scale of
1 to 10.
1 to 10?
Yeah, 1 being worst, 10 being best.
I would say just 3.
3.
Yeah.
Horrible, isn't it?
Yes.
Horrible. Duncan.
Keminni, we've seen laws, acts, bills go to Parliament. 48 hours, they pass them. We've seen them. Some go within 24 hours, whichever way, the emergency or what certificate of whatever. If the government is committed to RTI so as to be generally more transparent than all its predecessors, I think that it shouldn't take them more than 24 hours to, dot their I's and cross the T's. They should show that they are committed to being more transparent and pass the ITI. Now, the excuses have been over. Like, from whatever. They all make excuses because it looks as though to me the Ghanaian politician would rather keep documents under his table. They would rather keep reports. If there are instances of corruption, allegations, committees are formed. They go to do their work
and keep it away from
the public. And so you would find those instances repeating itself over the years.
Doctor, what's your score?
On corruption
and the RTI pass.
Keminni, I wish I could give more than the 3, but I'll give 3.
Very well. And so there you have it. Guests have scored the president's performance as far as tackling corruption is concerned at 3. But you can also do same. Join us on Facebook and on Twitter with your comments on your state of the nation. It could be a sector-by-sector score. Now, before the president delivered his address in Parliament, we asked for some opinions or expectations of what the president should tackle. Let's find out if the president indeed tackled some of these things. And Kwekutimi, before you take us to Facebook and Twitter for the comment, let's go through some of the expectations. We have industry expectation number 1 from Dr. Joseph Obeng, who is president of GUTA. And Kweku, we know some of GUTA's problems.
Of course.
Duty imports.
Currency matters.
Duty imports.
Yes.
Duty imports, currency. Well, let's read the first one. The first one says, we have always been talking about duty imports. The president said that there is a debate going on within his government, and we want the debate extended to include general stakeholders like us. Did it sound like that for you, Kweku?
Well, Keminni, not at all. I'm sure he might not have had the feel that he expected, but overall, I know the presidency is doing something with the state actors. I read something like they are intervening in the port situation. So maybe it might not have been directly in the State of the Nation address, but obviously at the back door they are Council of State. Keminni, that was what I wanted to pick up early on. When Nana Otuosrebo mentioned that, well, they are intervening in those issues, and anytime soon they would come up with something to cushion the issue. Keminni.
Very well, but from what the president has told us, rather, he's happy about the fact that we can clear goods in 24 and 48 hours, which means more money for the government. But
is saying, look, reduce it, the cost of the
more money, and then plug in the loopholes. There was no indication that, the government of the day has plans of reducing duty imports. If they have, we are yet to know and hear about those things. Another problem for industry, again from the perspective of GUTA, is we are concerned about security in the country.
Absolutely.
Kweku, why is security important for business people?
Of course, Keminni, can you thrive in an environment that is chaos? You might make enough money, not so much, but if you have guns all around you, then obviously the next armed robber is looking out for you. The next vigilante is looking out for you. So, Keminni, obviously you should know their concerns there, and he definitely wanted the president to touch on it. As to whether he's satisfied with it, later on, maybe when I go on social media, you will hear the thoughts of some individuals and their concerns in there. But really, the president did touch on it, and I believe you've really espoused it extensively, Keminni.
Right, and speaking of social media, I've been asking on my page on Facebook, Keminni Nyamani Amanor, whether or not you are impressed by the president's delivery of SONA 2019. You can go there and vote. I'll share the results at the end of the program. But leave your comments also on GH1 TV, our Facebook page. Industry expectation number 2. The purpose of SONA is to give a clear view of events in the country. Every time we only hear of statistics in the agric sector, which usually doesn't match up with the reality. What are the real measures in place to grow agriculture in Ghana? Was that question answered, Kweku?
Well, Edward Carroll, they're putting that question across. Of course, the president on his initiative towards farming has been recurrent over the period in some of the State of the Nation address. Not too well hammered, because this time it's sinking through well. What I was looking at for was real statistics of really what they've been able to do, what has come out of it, so that we will get a clearer understanding of the initiative and how well it has helped out. But those details, I did not get, Keminni, and I'm looking forward to if they will be provided later on by the agric minister or the like, then of course
indeed
it would go a long way to help.
If we take out fisheries, not include fisheries in agric, then the president spoke about two critical things in agric, and here are they. He talks about planting for food and jobs, admirably organized by the outstanding Minister of Agric. He also talked about the fact that exports of food crops such as cassava, rice, yellow and white maize have increased, and something he was happy to say because according to him, before he took office, we were importing these things. I'm not sure what's happening to me today, but he also says we had a bumper harvest of produce, and last year we did not import a single grain of maize. That was all the president essentially said about agric in the country.
So, Keminni, it tells you when I say, so yes, planting for food and jobs, money is allocated to it. I need a nitty-gritties, okay? So this number of people have been employed. This is the level of the news. These are the identifiables. These are the areas that you can find it. But maybe, Keminni, as you go on, you might share more with me on what Labour is also saying, and then probably I'd get a clearer understanding.
And let's do that now. The Labour perspective on the issue. Solomon Kote is with the ICU. He says the dollar versus the cedi fluctuation, this must be addressed. Free education, is it sustainable or not? Will we get the type of quality we are expecting from the scheme? Kwaku, my perspective on this is the president spoke about the fundamentals of the economy, but he didn't touch on the cedi or the cedi exchange rate.
Of course, a measure. So, it rests on the doorstep of the central bank governor as he, in a nice way, chipped in that, well, we've set up that economic team that should manage. But that has always been the situation anyway. If you have the pound, somebody just whispered to me that the pound is jumped almost close to the seven cedi mark. Obviously, Keminni, if this is the situation, then even all the effort you put in might go down the drain, because if you are paying, statutory payments, if you're paying part of the loans that you've gone for, the bonds, if you're
mortgages,
of course, it becomes difficult for you when the exchange rate is failing you like this, Keminni, continually. So it's really a problem. And in going back, Guta has really talked about it and emphasized the concerns that they really have with it. I don't think it's only Guta. I think it's every importer. Yeah.
Kwaku, the fundamentals as announced.
Well, I didn't want to go there, Keminni. I know where you want to go.
No, hold on, hold on.
I didn't want to go.
Hold on. The fundamentals as announced by the president.
Okay.
Inflation 9.6%, expected GDP growth 7.6%. In fact, he went into 2017, which was 8.1%. These are good.
Obviously,
but in our pockets, the cedi is wimping.
So I just struggle with the mismatch here. So we're looking well with our economy.
So the fundamentals are strong, but the cedi is weak.
Keminni, I knew you would lead me in.
What's causing the disconnect? Perhaps.
Absolutely, that's a question we should be putting to the economic managers. Of course, if you have inflation
headed by the vice president,
it should correspond. It should travel through. And here, maybe the researcher is here. He could share bits and pieces of it with me. But the disconnect is just so much, Keminni. The disconnect is so you wonder, why would I have inflation at a single digit, and yet when as you're going for a loan from the various banks, it looks like it doesn't even reflect the. You have the prime rate basically coming down 17%, but yet, from the various banks, they are not responding to that drop in the policy rate. And you kind of wonder, so what really should make these economic indicators reflect with the realities on the ground?
Let's move on to health. Health, the expectation from industry was that we want to hear equal distribution of doctors to district hospitals, as well as more midwives. Also, we would appreciate some words on the non-communicable disease centers advertised in their manifesto to be built in Tamale, Kumasi, Takoradi, and Accra. On health, let me go back and refer to my notes as far as what the president said. He spoke about easy renewal of our national health insurance cards.
Obviously.
He also spoke about the arrears.
Gone CEO or something for
yes,
a good job done.
I had no idea there was a short code for doing that.
Yeah.
I always accompany my mom to a center to have it done. He spoke about arrears, 1.2 billion cedis haven't been paid, employment, and 275 ambulances on their way to Ghana. Very important point. One ambulance, one constituency. That's how he put it. Very interesting and very, very important that we are going to have this. We hope that they will not become somewhere and rot away.
Obviously, one that I've seen. So we have ambulance sitting elsewhere and it's rotting away. We have some vehicles that could be used for some essential duties. We dry them on the rain and on the sun, and then eventually we battle ourselves. NDC brought it, and I think we should go beyond those pettiness and have the nation at heart first. I don't know if the ambulances are very new ambulances coming in, but what happens to the ones that were drying or wasting away on the sun, Keminni?
Very well, Kweku. Take us through what our viewers have been telling us as far as the state of the nation.
All right, so Keminni, because of time, I'll be very quick on this one. You put a question there. Are you impressed with the president's take on vigilantism? I mean, I would want to zero into vigilantism because the polls that we put out there, the last time I checked, we have over 42% out of it all education and the like talk about vigilantism. So let me just quickly get some of the comments that are coming through here. And are you impressed about the president's point on vigilantism? You said when we have, and that's from Destiny Fafa Bridges, when we have a president who is an expert in talking and doing little, what else can you ask for? I mean, I wouldn't go into the rest. Another person, Frank Pipperman says, I love Nanado. Well, for him, everything goes for Nanado. Very, very impressed by Lydia Owusu-Ansah. Lydia is actually impressed with the president. So, divergent views there, Keminni. Let me quickly look at what Aliu Mahama is saying. I don't think the press was emphatic on the ban on vigilantism. So, yes, he talked about it, but he was not emphatic. That is what Aliu Mahama is saying, because I expected him to have a crack. I expected him to crack that whip by charging the IGP to do all he can to ban it within a week or 2 weeks. So that is by the young man there on social media. Maybe a little bit of other things with Twitter. He says, I'm expecting different things apart from the education and one dam, one district. That was earlier on some of the few things that people talked about there on social media. So those are some tweets that we are getting early part of the day as we put across. How would you rate the state of our nation in Ghana? So we put those questions. You can go to our social media chips and then read all about it. Our security network system is not very good. We are not safe if state functions is going on like this. Aaron Babako Korkom put that thing across. So, Keminni, that's just a general view of what is happening on social media, both via Twitter and via Facebook. We'll keep this information until tomorrow. You can still make your thoughts heard, and on our various platforms, we'll let the world hear your views, Keminni.
Well, Kweku, thank you very much for sharing that with us. This is our coverage of SONA 2019. We'll go to Parliament before we wrap up this conversation. But let me come to my guests here in the studio. Duncan Amoah is Executive Secretary of COPEC. John Frinjua is Research Officer with the CDD. Your final take on the state of the nation, as far as what we've heard from the president is concerned, and perhaps your general score?
I would say the president has touched on a lot of issues. He's been frank with some issues. He's been economical with the truth on others, or let's say that he hasn't spoken forcefully on others. One that he hasn't spoken forcefully on, which is a concern for civil society, is corruption and how to rein in wastage. The other one is the very not clear, emphatic comment on RTI, which is very important for fighting corruption. he's been, for me, I think he's been emphatic on security issues, and I think that his call to the other side to get into more of a bipartisan approach, I think that is very useful. I think that we shouldn't just stop at the bipartisan approach. We should also look at other approaches, which I don't think he has clearly left out. He talked about legislations, but I also think that we should also talk about how we are going to reform our security services to be able to deal drastically at some of these issues. My brother here mentioned the police council, which is, of course, under the presidency, in fact, because everybody there is being appointed by the president. So if we don't reform the system, it means that the police council itself will be compromised in its dealings with some of these vigilante groups, which are kind of affiliated to political parties. So if one political party is in power, their allegiance kind of goes to that political party. I think that the general State of Nation address is good.
Is it reflective of...
It's good enough. Not reflective of everything, especially with the currency issues. Of course, the macroeconomic fundamentals are great, but that doesn't translate in...
It hasn't yet.
It hasn't yet.
It will take time, I guess.
I don't know when it is going to reflect, because if you have the exchange rate skyrocketing, I don't think it is helpful at all. It might be very... difficult for individuals, for families to
understand that.
To understand that,
yes.
And also to make a living. I can't imagine having one city and not be able to trade in it.
Duncan, what's your state of the nation in relation to what we've heard from the president?
Keminni, the finance, the financial market, 12.7 billion gone. I would be happy to hear my president, possibly at the next State of the Nation or the next meet up with the press, discuss with Ghanaians how some of these amounts have been recouped, if they've been misapplied anyhow and is now a burden on all of us. Again, he also mentioned challenges with revenue generation. We are interested because if the government is well-to-do, some of the taxes that we are burdened with would at least give way. One of the ways that we believe the president and government can be able to get a little more revenue is to tackle the issue of fuel smuggling. That alone would rake in at least 1.5 billion Ghana cedis.
Very well. Unfortunately, we have to go. I wanted to take your score, but we have to go. And we may not be able to go to Parliament, as I said earlier, but we're sure to bring you more interviews from the legislators in our subsequent broadcast. But on my page on Facebook, Keminni Amanor, that is, I asked, did the President's State of the Union Address 2019 meet your expectations? Said yes, 54% said no. That is your view on the subject. I'm grateful you stayed with us the last few hours as we did this coverage. Join us again at 6:30 as Sawami here brings you more on this subject. My name is Keminni Amanor. Have a good afternoon.
GH1 TV, your best experience.
Readings.